No lie, no joke, people. They don't know the badness come down. They don't know say um running African is so may I say, yeah man. So you don't know the vibes come down. People like share and subscribe. Share it to your grandmother, your grandfather, your grandfather, your loved ones in the yard, the cat and the dog, yard and abroad. You don't know the badness come down.
One Uptown TV. Yo, enough there, me I represent. Da, 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 da. Bang.
Been representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad Gaza, bad we bad. Bad we bad Gaza.
Things either are what they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they're not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these cases. A fumi task, a fear task, a fui task. Crashed overnight into a group of partygoers. The police say 9 persons were killed and many injured when the driver rammed his car into the Vancouver Festival crowd. The incident happened as members of the Filipino community gathered to celebrate Lapu-Lapu Day. At least 9 people killed, and the vehicle entered the street at 8:14 p.m. last night and struck people attending the Lapu-Lapu Day festival. Several other people were injured, but the exact number of casualties was not known. A 30-year-old Vancouver man was arrested at the scene, and the department's major crime section is overseeing the investigation, according to the police. This is coming out of Canada this morning. All right, we're watching that and we'll keep you on Wednesdays, April 30, that the continent of Africa, the call has gone out from South Africa, it originated, from Julius Malema, and from all the others across the continent of Africa to take to the streets on the April 30 in support of Ibrahim Traore. Go out militant. Put on your Gideon boots. Go with your placards. Arrange in your communities. We have to do this across Jamaica. Hold the Jamaican flag too, because we are going to show that this support for Ibrahim Traore is coming from Jamaica. Remember that. We'll talk some more about that later. Ibrahim Traore. One of the things we can tell you is that I have not been able to confirm that. It's all over the social media. I've tried in every which way to confirm that, but haven't been able to. So let me just say that off the top of my head. And I've worked really hard in trying to confirm that. All right. Did I give the wrong day for the date? Okay. Yeah, it is Wednesday out. But that Usain Bolt situation, I haven't been able to confirm it. And as I said before, I've checked all of Usain Bolt's social media pages. It's not there. I've also checked Ibrahim Traore's and others, and it's not there. So I'm not sure about the claim. There's no solid evidence to confirm this. Violent extremism in the Sahel. And in October 2024, you remember that they said the persistent and growing strength of violent extremist organization in the Sahel threatens to exacerbate the humanitarian crisis and spread instability across Africa. And they said at the time that this posed significant security and financial risk to the United States and Europe. You know, they created ISIS in the Sahel. Remember that was created by mercenaries and mercenary governments. So when we see General Langley of AFRICOM wanting us to believe that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the Sahel, which is rising up to reclaim its sovereignty, are somehow a problem, terrorists, He wants us to believe that when Africans stand on their own 2 feet, it is a crisis. Think about that. I wanted a word in front of that, but I can't use it on the air. At Burkina Faso, we're not looking at Bamako. We're not looking at Niamey. We are looking at Washington. We're looking at Paris. We're looking at London. Slavery, and nobody's saying anything about it. Look at the IMF and look at the World Bank, wrapping African nations in chains of debt. Look at them. And you remember that it was the West that murdered Patrice Lumumba, because Lumumba wanted Congo's wealth for the people of Congo. It was the West that orchestrated the killing of Thomas Sankara because he refused to beg at the feet of Paris. Remember that. It was the West that hunted Muammar Gaddafi like an animal because he dared to imagine an Africa ruled by Africans with an African currency backed by gold. Amilcar Cabral. My village, every city, every heart that says Africa is not for sale. Africa to rise. Africa must unite. Do not challenge me on it. Burkina Faso, we've got Namibia. This is the time right now for us to take a stand, even if we're sitting down. The only real threat is a free Africa. And we promise you this without apology. We promise you this, wherever you are, we promise you this, that Africa will be free. Burkina Faso is not the threat. Mali is not the threat. Niger is not the threat. There are millions of us. And we're taking to the streets on Wednesday to show you our strength. I say to you, Jamaica, and wherever you're listening to us from this morning, from Mali, from Congo, from the revolution starts with us, continues with us, and it ends when we say 93 for Nde. If we weren't there in 2011 for Gaddafi, then we must be there today for Ibrahim Traore. And now, a very interesting story coming out. I think it was in the Jamaica Observer that I saw that story. Very interesting. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I had a discussion with Bert Samuels a few weeks ago, but it's a few months ago. And if you remember, the topic of that discussion at the time centered around the colonial era laws and how or whether they were still being used or weaponized in Jamaica. The topic of the discussion at the time when I spoke with Bert was Obia me but no enslave me. Well, an interesting article in the Jamaica Observer just a few days ago, April 25. The headline was, Judge Suggests Bible Reading for Man Guilty of Practicing Obia. And it goes on to say, Cambridge resident O'Shawn Grant was slapped with a fine and advised to read his Bible when he appeared in the St. James Parish Court on Wednesday to answer accusations of being involved in the ritualistic practice known as Obia. Grant, who appears in the early 20s, pleaded guilty before presiding judge Keisha Grant Price. According to court records, the police executed a search warrant at Grant's residence on March 25. Upon entry, the authorities observed the dwelling was shrouded in a mist of smoke and there was incense burning in each corner of Grant's bedroom. A plain white T-shirt with various denominations of money was discovered on the floor, surrounded by burning candles in a ritualistic fashion. He had various boxes on his dresser labeled Money Rain, Money House, and African Powers. Grant was also wearing 4 silver rings. When the officer instructed him to remove them, he expressed fear of dying and stated that the rings served as protection. He also emphasized his deeply held beliefs of declaring that he was fully Guzu. Now, Judge Price asked the defendant after hearing the allegations, "What kind of oil were you rubbing up into, sir?" Grant responded, "May have a problem sleeping at night." The judge inquired, "So what do you do to sleep at night?" Grant told the judge, "Me just buy 2 little incense." The judge then offered Grant an alternative method to induce sleep. "Try magnesium and prayer, sir, or try Habakkuk or Haggai. Try to read those books of the Bible. One of them must put you to sleep," Grant Price told the defendant, before ordering the defendant to pay $5,000 fine or 5 days in jail. We have on the phone Alex Mile Priest. You know him very well. A student of history, a graduate of the University of the West Indies, who has been seriously and deeply researching Jamaica's traditional practices, African traditional practices, and their retention in Jamaica, and how they have been demonized by the enslavers. Alex joins us on the phone lines. Alex, good morning.
Peace and love, sis.
Greetings.
Peace and love.
Greetings, my brother.
Greetings.
I know you have already done a vlog on this, and you have read this. Your first impressions?
Well, let me tell you, I definitely have more to say. It is my intention to put out a more formal speech that will be targeting not only, as I said in the vlog, the lawyers who say that they are conscious, but as well some of the other traditional groups, Revival, Rasta, etc. Because my impression of this is that Jamaica is backpedaling, big sister. Jamaica is backpedaling because if you look at all of the reports that have come out of Jamaica in terms of religious freedom, etc., everybody says we don't enforce the Obia Act. They say it is not being enforced. They say, oh, you can play your drums and you can do this and you can do that. We won't lock you up. But here in this day, in 2025, we have evidence, tangible evidence that they are still against traditional spirituality in Jamaica. My first impression, really and truly in a nutshell then, would be, how is it that you're talking about a decolonization push, a decolonial constitution? How is it that you're speaking about constitutional reform that's going to take us out of those oppressive times into a time of self-love and self-affirmation, if these are the steps that you're taking against people practicing their traditional religion? Shame on you, Jamaica. Shame on you.
One of the things that I saw you doing, Alex, was to go through you looked again at the Obia Act and you asked some pertinent questions, one of which was, what's the definition of Obia? Then you also questioned how the use of candles and the use of incense, how come those have been criminalized in Jamaica? Elaborate on that.
So when you look at the act, the OBIA Act, the 1898 OBIA Act, and really and truly its last revision was in 2024 when the punishment of flogging was taken out of the act. 2014, sorry. In 2014, it was amended. And the biggest problem with that amendment is that if you consider that it was just 3 years before that, in 2011, that the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms was enshrined in the Constitution, and freedom of religion has its own section, section 17 of that document. You wonder how is it that they went into this act and didn't decide to just remove it entirely. And it has to do with the fact that they have decided not to define what OBIA is because they simply don't know. All they say is that OBIA, the definition of OBIA is that it's one and the same as Mayalism, so they say. Now, Mayal is the traditional religious system of Jamaica. It is the intersection of African spirituality and Lokono Arawak kind of spirituality of the land. And it shows me that we are still in a time where we don't love ourselves because they never took the time at any point in time to seek out practitioners to say, is what you are doing a religious system, a spiritual system? The next thing is that there's no definition for religion in the Constitution either. So we assume that their definition of religion is Christianity and the other Abrahamic religions, and possibly whichever one suits them. Because
African-centered traditional spiritual practices are excluded. So I'd like that I'd like that you also raise the point of how other similar religions or similar practices, traditional practices, are now embraced in Jamaica, allowed to advertise on radio and television.
Yes.
And talk to us about those that have come in and are booming, that are really just by a different name, but the very same thing, if you ask me.
So from the 1950s, Jamaica has had, so before independence, 1962, Jamaica has had what they call the Hindu Marriage Act. So from those times, those people who came in the 1840s, when they so-called abolished slavery and didn't have anybody to work for them anymore, because of course our people would have just left, would have wanted nothing to do with it anymore, and they still needed to run these plantations. So they brought in these Hindu indentured laborers, and from day one, they've been giving them land, they've been giving them businesses to operate and putting them in a class above the dark-skinned indigenous man and woman of this land, Jamaica. So they recognize their marriages.
Remember Indian Royal, because, Jamaican people still say Indian Royal, you know. And it's interesting. Royal, what do you mean by royal? You know?
They put that in a class above themselves, and it was programmed that way. And so they are still coming in. Even the Prime Minister was with this guru the other day that donated how much money to the government. We don't know for what purpose. He did these big seminars and all of that. People can be speaking about palm reading and everything, and palmistry is directly spoken about in the OBIA Act.
And these are
fortune telling.
And these are and they're also allowed to advertise. On radio, in media, and in newspapers, on television. They are allowed to sponsor programs. And yet, a man who was burning incense, and I heard you raise this point, is it illegal to burn incense? Is it illegal to light candles? We just saw the burial of one of the chief reptilians in Rome. And they were burning candles and using there was so much incense there. You wondered if the thing was getting stink under the sun. there was just so much incense from everybody. But this is incense and candles. And you pointed out how this is used in the Roman Catholic Church or it's used in the Anglican Church. But then in those ritualistic spaces, it's not considered illegal.
Because it's Christianity. Because it's not our traditional spirituality. Remember, in the 1730s to the culmination in 1760 with Chief Tetch's war, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was made very clear in the first act,
yes,
that would have constituted the OB3AH Act, that it was an act against the irregular assembly of slaves. They never wanted us to have unity. They never wanted dark-skinned indigenous people in Jamaica to unify. And that was the issue with our traditional spirituality.
And they discussed that. This is all in the documents, which is and this is one of the conversations I had with the Minister of Constitutional Affairs. We didn't go into it because there was just so much to say, but I did raise this point with her about the historical context of why the practice of OB3AH was made illegal in Jamaica. And this had everything to do with liberation and the fact that Africans, before they went to war, were gathering and praying and lighting whatever they should them light, whether it is herbs or otherwise. And and then they identified this as the unifier. And so they grouped it, they said at the time, and so they made it illegal. There's a whole discussion in the British archives and even in the literature that's available at our fingertips right now that we can find how this came about. What is it called that you're making, my brother, today regarding, because this situation is fluid. We're just seeing this in the last few days.
Yep. So the first thing, I don't know if anyone who knows Mr. Oshan Grant from Cambridge, Mobile, we badly need to be in touch with him.
Or if he hears this, please reach out to either myself or Alex.
Yeah, man. Yes. Feel free to reach out, Mr. Grant, Oshan Grant from Cambridge.
How can he reach you, Alex?
And you can touch base with us either on Instagram, myself or Kabu, and on Instagram I'm Alex Mayal Priest, or you can call me 876-495-7370. Also, I am calling once again upon all these constitutional lawyers who said they're for liberation, Bert Samuel, Isaac Buchanan, Charles Ganga Singh, all of those big names. We're calling upon you now, my friend. I went to school in Ableton Foot. Any one of you who have decided that you would step up for the liberation of our people, please come forward and help us. Okay? And we're calling upon revival. We're calling upon Rasta. We're calling upon all traditional people in Jamaica, but especially my maroon brothers and sisters, calling upon you now. Let us stand together and put an end to the violation of our religious rights in Jamaica. This is our tradition. We need to claim it. We need to love it and love who we are. That is my cause. The 6th of January every year, a compound does what would have been considered a heathen festival, and it matters so much to them, calling upon Chief Curry. All of those chiefs step forward now. Let us put an end to
Thank you, my brother.
Internal reparations first.
Thank you, my brother. We're going to Attorney at Law, Pan-African Attorney at Law, Bert Samuels, right now. Thank you so much. Bert Samuels, my brother, and my friend. Bert, we were just... Good morning, Bert. Greetings, my brother. How are you?
Yeah, morning. How are you?
Boy, the last time I'm well if you two are well. The last time we had this conversation, I was so happy that you actually gave me the topic for the segment, and I was really happy about that because it really fit what we were about to say. OB3AH, but don't enslave me. And we went through the colonial era law. You went through it with a fine-tooth comb. All the way. And one of the things that you were cautiously optimistic about is that, one, they had removed flogging, they should remove it altogether, but two, that it wasn't being used now in Jamaica, but it should be taken off the books immediately. Did you, in your wildest dreams, think that colonial era law would be used in Jamaica and that there would be a fine and or prison sentence?
You see, well, I didn't know that police had time to be hunting down the beliefs, these believers. Don't they have things to do? What parish was this? One of those high-end parishes for crime?
St. James?
Yes, I didn't know they have time for that. I didn't know. I'm so disappointed. The decolonization of our laws. I thought that would have taken place by now. And you said, oh, they weren't doing it anymore. Now we see a cop going at a man who is supposed to be practicing obia. And it is so horrible. It makes us embarrassed about this. There's a little history to all of these beliefs that I want to share in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
In England, they had the law against witchcraft. And way back in there. So they have people with their own beliefs. But in 1951, they repealed that law. That's 11 years before we were granted what they call independence.
Mm-hmm.
So they make sure that their citizens cannot get criminal sanctions for any belief they want to have. But down here, 11 years before they gave us that piece of paper and that flag, they repealed that law entirely in England. And we are afraid to do what they've done. So you see what happens is that we are more oppressive to each other than the colonials are sometimes. We are well taught.
Yes. It's interesting that you make that point. I think it's a good point to make, to say that even today in England, you have witches and warlocks and everything, and all of this is perfectly legal, and people are meeting in their covens, and this is something that we shun, because this is not even comparable to the spiritual practice of obia. This is a whole different kind of situation, but that is that's pretty legal. So where does this leave us, though, Bert? Because here is a law.
I'd like to volunteer to contest this, the constitutionality of it, because yes, and I heard someone previously saying, and we have it on the books, that you have a right to practice your religious beliefs, and you have a right for expression. But if the public could hear how oppressive this law is again, in 4 minutes I could just wrap up what
I am going to leave you now to just go through that.
All right, so here we go. So that about 20 years ago, they decided to take away flogging, because rape and obia were met as punishment by flogging. You were flogged for practicing obia, flogged for rape. So they put it puts on the same balance as rape. And then now what happens? How can you go find yourself going to prison? One, if they find you, they say practicing obia, which I don't know if they know, but the English people didn't know what obia is. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they're going to know from us, because that was our secret. Mm-hmm. Secondly, if you have someone who is coming to see you for therapy, for whatever the obia man did, or for medicine, if you come to see him, you also have committed a crime. Mm. If the implements of obia are found in his possession, you are found guilty of a crime. And listen to this now. Anyone that distributes literature promoting the crime is also guilty. Now, this is interesting, because that law was made before television. Mm. So when TVJ put other ethnic groups practicing their I can read your palm and tell you what your future and which boyfriend you must have and which you mustn't have, when the other ethnic groups, the Indians, put that on our television, were it obia, then the television station could be fined or go to court. Mm-hmm. But we embrace the beliefs of other cultures, and we criminalize our African culture. And what we do is we make it look as though obia only does offensive things. You know, it doesn't do when you go to the man and he gives you herbs. They've taken that out of it. And hence, and it stretches even into Haiti, where some people of the view, Haiti is suffering because they practice too much obia. So that the minds of the people have become anti-African practices in all respects.
Wow.
That's why we couldn't beat the drum.
Yes.
You know, we couldn't beat the drum because we communicated with the drum.
Yes.
So all these anti-African laws, and today, 2025, you and I are wasting time discussing something that has continued to be criminal practice in Jamaica when the British have taken off all of that of their laws 74 years ago.
Oh my God! Did what did the judge have to deal with? Because he was fined or $5,000 or 5 days in prison. What was the discretion? What was the discretion that the judge had in this case, if any?
Well, the judge could have said, "Listen, times have passed, and he has to do something. I'm going to admonish and discharge you." He didn't have to put 5 days in prison or 5,000.
So like
the judge can just say, "It's an old law that I'm embarrassed to be forced to look at, and admonish and discharge him."
But the admonishment was.
Go read your Bible.
Go read Habakkuk and Haggai. No, listen to me, Bert, because we are not calling for the judge to be sanctioned, but it might get to that point. How dare you use your platform to say to somebody who's come in front of you to go and read Habakkuk and Haggai, if I saw the word pronounced, when this is a King James version? With the King James is the someone who wrote demonology. Remember, King James himself was a demonology practitioner, you know.
And listen to this. He is imposing a religious belief, his own possibly.
I think it's a female
on another
judge.
Person.
From the name of it, it sounds feminine. It sounds like it's a female.
So she is saying, listen, the African religious thing that you are practicing, I am going to impose on you another religious belief.
Yes.
No, that is, no one should be forced to practice any. So that
in itself is blasphemy. And I'm going to use a religious term. That's a travesty of justice. That is an unjust justice system. Because how can you use your seat where you're supposed to be, it's justice and human rights we're talking about, you know, and you have a Jamaican in front of you who obviously is a Jamaican who has not gone through your school system, who is not a lawyer and who is not a judge, but who has come before you, humbled and humble enough to tell you that I cannot sleep. And you, the judge, prescribing magnesium from the what you call the seat of the judge, sit on a chair?
From the bench.
From the bench. You prescribing magnesium from the bench. But I think this is illegal, you know. I think it is wrong. And I think that the council, what's the name of a council that oversees lawyers? Somebody has to look into this. No judge have no right to be, she's a medical doctor, prescribing magnesium. And secondly, is she a priest prescribing Habakkuk and Haggai from somebody who tells you I cannot sleep and I'm using incense and we know that incense can't put you to sleep? But I am very upset at this.
But you must be, because here it is. Even in certain European countries, which require helmets, for example, for riding bikes, the Sikhs, because it's their religious turban that they wear, they are exempted from that particular wear under the Road Traffic Act elsewhere. So people are accommodating religious differences. How can you impose? Suppose a Jamaican goes to court and a Muslim judge says, you need to read the Quran. You know, you need to go and read the Quran. We'd be very upset.
Of course.
Yeah. So there's a religious intolerance of those who want to cast stones, who themselves live in glass houses. You can't be a member of the judiciary and you're forcing someone to go and read a particular religious book when there is freedom of religion.
And prescribing medication. Who are you? Suppose you go take magnesium because the judge said if you take magnesium, but you're allergic to magnesium. Are you then responsible for him?
So what is happening is, listen, you have an ailment that your religious belief cannot cure, and I am giving you now Western medicine with all its the side effects as the better thing. It's an invasion of his personal liberties, and I'm say that,
But Bert, I know
accurate.
I know you've been looking at these colonial era laws. We've had many conversations about them. You have been especially concerned about these laws, and this one thing tells me why you have this overwhelming concern. What can you tell me about the process of the constitutional reform and how they're looking at the colonial era laws?
Well, I must tell you, on the agenda of the Reparation Council of Jamaica, we have called upon the government to repeal the OB Act. I just want to make that clear. If anyone is saying that because I'm a deputy chair, what are you doing? We have called upon the government timelessly to remove the OB law from the act. Because you see, what is happening is that you have on the one hand this nice thing that says people can practice their religious beliefs and you can't remove churches. You can't remove anything. That's beautifully written in the Constitution. It can't be controverted that it is intolerant. That particular constitutional provision does not allow any religious belief to be persecuted, to be criminalized. So until someone takes the matter to the courts and have a constitutional court go there, but someone has to pay. Poor people are going to be being dragged before the court. They have to go and get an attorney. So maybe we should form a group just to contest this.
I heard you said when you came on earlier that you are willing to lead this process.
I am willing. Yes, I am totally.
What do you need from us?
Okay, so the person who was affected could get in contact with you, and then because we're not allowed to tout.
Right. Please contact me, and then I put you onto that person. Do you need anything?
Another way it could happen.
Yes.
A practitioner could say, I am fearful that I'll be arrested and I want my freedom to practice my African religious belief. So it doesn't have to be the person.
Alex, you don't know Alex. Are you don't know Alex? Mine not. Alex, my help, priest, is you that. Right?
Yes.
Because if the brother who was charged and brought before the court, the young man, is fearful, and he might not be, but that would be two people, then if there's someone who's willing to stand up and say, I am fearful because I am a mild priest.
Yeah. Or it could be otherwise. Every now and then I go for therapy to so-and-so, and I fear that if I go, then I'll be arrested under the OB Act because it's a person who seeks the counsel and the remedies given by the OB man. That is also committing a crime. So they did everything. So anyone that promotes, anyone that has the instruments of OB, anyone that consults the OB man himself.
Yes.
And as I've said, they used to whip their asses.
Yes.
and listen to the last thing now. It's the only law on the books in Jamaica where after you have been sentenced by the court, do your sentence, come out, think you are free. You come under police supervision. In the law, it says that you are come under police supervision. The police can begin now, every now and then coming to your yard and harassing you.
And this is what the brother who was charged probably doesn't know. Is that he has been charged, he has been fined, he has been convicted because it's $500 or whatever you call it.
I'm going to say that and go up. No, the police are now, there's a police supervision provision in that law. I know of no other offense. But after you have completed your sentence, you now come out, you continue to be, as it were, punished, which again is unconstitutional because once you're punished, that ought to be it. So there are several problems with the OB law. It allows police supervision of people who are now free, now designated to be innocent, and it also, they remove the flogging, and it also has to do with the freedom of distribution. We have a constitution that says you can distribute anything. You are a member of the press. If you wanted to, for example, IRFM got an advertisement from an OB man that you need to come and check him because he can help you. Just the same way the Indians are getting their publicity on television. The station is in trouble.
They're also on radio because we've had some of these on radio here.
You can do it for the Indians. Be careful now. This is free advice. You can do it for the Indians, palm readers, but you can't do it for the African OBR. Okay? That's how we hate. It's self-hate all over it. That's what it is.
I just want to reiterate one of the things you said the last time we spoke is that it's interesting because we have the colonial era law that is being weaponized against the people of Jamaica regarding access to the beaches. And we've been talking about the law that they're using, the 1857 law. All right, or whenever 57. So them using that law, then they have, then here's another one that has been pulled out, weaponized against the people. Question is, how many more are there on the books and how will they be weaponized? Today they come for the Africans and you never do nothing because I never touch you. And tomorrow they come for so and so and you never do nothing. But one day it's going to reach your doorstep because you might just be walking down the road and it's jaywalking that.
You know, I want to explain what I often say. Obia may but not enslave me. What I'm saying in that sentence is this. The people who enslaved us make us believe that Obia was the worst thing that could happen to us. While they have us in chains. Can you believe that? While we were in chains down here, Obia was illegal, but slavery was legal. Let me repeat that. Obia was illegal, but slavery was legal. Can you believe that?
I only believe it because I know it to be so. Otherwise, you know, parallel universe, and I would never believe it. Bert, a mutual friend of ours who's an attorney at law has written a text. She says, Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms 2011, Section 13. And then she says, question, is the judge an Obia woman because she's prescribing drink and scriptures?
That's good. Yes. I get you.
Yes.
Don't call anyone's name.
I'm not calling anyone's name. That's why I deliberately not call nobody name.
Yes. So in Western medicine, when you go and sit down with a therapist on a couch, and they're asking you about your life, your family background, and trying to help your mind out of order, that's fine. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, but those traditions that we've had, because I went to what they would call a Obia man in Ghana. It was a woman. She's a counselor. She put me to sit and she asked me about my life and gave me advice. But she didn't have on a white coat. She was a black woman who was a therapist in the community. And I went to see her.
Well, this is very common. This is very common.
So tell the police must come, but it's Ghana. It happens. Tell them come from it this morning.
This is very common. The herbalists and everybody just... we're going to leave it there, Bert. One of the good things that's come out of this is that you have... committed to giving your time and your expertise to challenge this constitutionally. And we'll take it from there.
Okay, I owe it to the people. One love. By the way, my brethren, you know, I must big him up this morning. Am I allowed to big up anyone?
Go right ahead and big up your brethren and the ones in Coronation Market.
You know that. Cabo, you know that the people at GP, you know, they really listen to you and you know. Don't forget those brethren, you know. One of them tell me that his church him go Sunday morning. Your church.
Big up the ones and ones at GP, you know. Big enough. Good morning. Because we don't say enough political data anyway. Yes. Free all the political prisoners. Yes, Bert.
One love.
Give thanks. All right. Bert Samuels there. And this is not an easy thing. We take a break. Our rituals and our customs and the margins of real history, sometimes them celebrate it August morning, and sometimes they don't. But we know better. We know better. I was watching the funeral of the last great reptilian, and it was phenomenal. The rituals, the symbols, the customs, the traditions, down to the Swiss guards. Dating back to 523, they have kept the rituals going, the candles and the incenses, and some turn the casket upside down, turn it to the people, turn the face to Mary, and so on. Take it into a place and take it out, parade the body through the streets. And all the rituals, some of them couldn't even be publicized. These rituals couldn't even be publicized because they were so private. Their rituals, and it hit me while I got up at 3 o'clock to watch that thing. And it hit me when I realized, well, I always did know, but it came home to me in a forceful way. This is how you're keeping your reptilian order in place through rituals and customs and traditions and mores. You're doing this with all of this. And of course, thievery. The rituals are the bones of memory. The symbols are the blueprints. Symbols. That is why they destroyed our rituals. Our traditions are rivers which carry wisdom from one generation to the next, and that is why they have destroyed our traditions and have given us a whole new alien reptilian culture, ritual, and tradition. So we use our own tongues and conquest away. Ethiopia was the only one that colonized, and now we're seeing Israel in and Saudi Arabia in, and China in, and we're not even all gone. But customs are the living practice of freedom. And if we lose ourselves. So when the transatlantic slave trade was unleashed upon us, when millions of our ancestors were kidnapped, taken from their homelands, the Ma'afa, our sister Marimba Annie, Mama Marimba, reminds us. They waged a war on memory itself. That's why I say I have a moral obligation to remember. Look what they did. Look what they did. They banned the languages that our ancestors spoke. And you heard Bert say it a while ago, them silence the drums that summoned the rebellions and the wars. Them destroy our names. The names that we use for crown ourselves in dignity, them destroy the names we're calling ourselves by. For them name, we're using our tongues to destroy ourselves. And we have held on to those names, you know, those Western enslaver demonic names. We have held on to them and we're giving them to our children. Weaponized against his brother in Montego Bay, a mockery of the ceremonies that we used to hold our communities together. Them still calling the sacred rituals that we do witchcraft, a them a witchcraft, a them in the witchcraft, them in a demonology. This was King James's thing. Them look at our divine traditions because we are a spiritual people, and them say it was savagery. Remember that. As wise as we were and as wise as we are, they said we were ignorant, and we have bought into that. Because I am a person because you are a person. This is what the word unu that we use means. Unu is a Shona word. It's a Bantu word for the same word we use as Ubuntu. It means the same thing. So our ancestors recognized what was being done to them, how they were being stripped of everything, that when every ritual was outlawed, every symbol was desecrated, every custom was punished. Our ancestors remembered, their spirit resisted, and they said, make we call all our people them Uno, so at least one of them might many years down the line look at the word, connect it back to the Bantu people, and know who they are as great civilizers, creators of civilization. This is what they know. This is why they destroyed our symbols and our customs. This is why they took our memories. This is why we are now suffering from post-traumatic slavery disorder. Understand this. The destruction of African rituals, customs, symbols, traditions. This was not an accident. It was not a byproduct of slavery. It was the strategy that they used to devalue us and made us less than human. And we have bought into that so we can have a judge elevating a book translated by a man who was a demon worshipper in court over the spiritual practices and traditions of Africa. This is our lot, and this is not good. 2025, we got to change that. Because when you destroy a people's memory, you can enslave them for generations. When you erase the rituals, you can turn kings and princes and royalties into laborers and service industries, and that's what's happening on the island in Jamaica. When you demonize a people's customs, you're replacing them self-knowledge and them self-confidence with self-hatred, and this is what we have become. This is not just physical violence. This is spiritual violence. This is psychic violence. This is cultural genocide. And we have to name what is happening to us to change what has happened to us. And yet, here we are. Here we are. I am a living testimony and a living testament to an unbroken chain of memory. I am a breathing witness to this extinguished fire. I am Thomas Sankara. I am Hatshepsut. I am Patrice Lumumba. I am Queen Nani. I am Mualimu Marcus Messiah Garvey. I am reclaiming our rituals. And to reclaim our rituals is not to look backward, you know. Reclaiming your rituals, and as I watched that thing on television, the burial and funeral situation of the great reptilian, it really hit me that when you recover, when you reclaim your ritual, you're recovering your stolen future. We have no choice. We have to honor our customs. This is not nostalgia. This is rebellion against forgetting, because we have forgotten. We have become who we are becoming. When we remember our symbols, we're rebuilding our souls. We must reclaim all of them, all of our symbols, every single one, without apology, or else we're going to find ourselves under the sword of colonial era laws, and we're going to be okay with it. To be inside here, try to find a dance or come from that time there. What dance was it again? Was it the pepper seed or the folklore? What was it? The Della move? I don't know, but the clash did really have me away. I mean, there I try to find the dance for match the song. Anyway, Ninja, pick up yourself. Doing greetings. Thank you so much for tuning in from Malawi. I am livid, especially against the background that Indian fortune tellers are essentially practicing obia as weaponized under the Constitution, but by virtue of race, they get a free pass. Yes, my sister. Andrew Lumsden says, if your religion needs government sanctions to have you believe it, it has no standing. Faith must by definition be personal, and collectives must be of free, like-minded souls. Donna Marty says, so what about the proliferation of Indian fortune tellers operating out of who knows where with only a contact mobile number? And that judge should be removed from the bench. How dare she? I am getting very near that. Yes, thank you for putting in Ibrahim Traore. Remember, we are taking to the streets wherever we are in Jamaica. Organize it where you are, you know, because we're heading where we can head, right? We in Centon right here. So find your town squares, make your placards, put on your Gideon boot and your army uniform if you have it, and your red beret or your black beret. It's Ibrahim Traore. We say we are going to be marching. I am calling upon Jamaica to take to the streets on Wednesday in your numbers wherever you are. Plan it among yourself. Call me and let me know which part of the day me want to join something or do something right down here, Senator Ochi. One way or the other, I'm telling you, I'm taking to the streets on Wednesday because Africa has declared Wednesday as a day that we march for Ibrahim Traore, that we protest against AFRICOM and the colonizers and empire and the thieves who want to kill him. We, as I said earlier, we couldn't do it for Thomas Sankara or Patrice Lumumba or Muammar Gaddafi, but we can do it for Ibrahim Traore. Don't forget to carry your Jamaican flags. This is a day when the Jamaican flags mean everything, because we have to show the world. Post it to your social media. Post it TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere you are. Do your live, go live, and show your Jamaican flag and identify that you are standing up with Ibrahim Traore and the people of Burkina Faso against AFRICOM and the colonizers in the United States of America on that day. That's Wednesday, April 30. This is a call that is being made across the world, and we make that call from right here in Jamaica for the rest of the world to join with us wherever you are, to march for liberty and freedom in the name of freedom, in the name of Africa, and in support of Ibrahim Traore. Our God, our deities, and we find the names of our deities have become words that if you say them, you can be arrested, you can be sent to prison. There's something, or Meta AI, or Deep Seek, or anywhere you want. Le Bombo Bone, the Le Bombo Bone. This is the first known recorded mathematics. The women, black women, Bantu women, developed mathematics by calculating their menstrual cycles in context with the moon. And they were able, through those calculations, to determine their menstrual cycles. They carved those calculations, mathematical calculations, on what has become known as the Le Bombo Bone. Look it up. It's mathematics. It's not me, sister. This is Western, Eastern, Middle Eastern, Southern, and every single place scholarship that they have all agreed on. I know there was another bone, but that one came after the Le Bombo Bone. But that word, without the Le before it, can get you into prison in Jamaica. They have made the word a bad word. Why? So that we would forget that we were the originators of mathematics, and not just we were, but women, Bantu women, African women are the originators of what we have come to know as mathematics. They have taken everything from us. If we forget, then we become idiots. We become service industry. And this is what we are. The Prime Minister tells us that we are a service industry. We must lie down for every Tom and Harry, because we are service industry. This is where we are now in Jamaica. When people are talking about manufacturing, when people are talking about nationalism, when people are talking now about survival, the government of Jamaica is telling us that we are a service industry. We do not have skills, and they're going to import skills in the island. And we are okay with that. We say, bond that. Let me go take a quick break. Southall is online. Could you let me know, please? Let me know. I don't know if Southall is online. Let me go check and see. Okay, no, certainly not there. All right, let me know what's happening, please. South Africa, we're trying to get to Southall, some things we want to talk about. Southall is a chairman of the Rastafari United Front and leader of the International Tour de France. He's a teacher in African spirituality, African cosmology, African anthology, and African philosophy, African history, African culture, and African traditional religions. Southall Haram Anuba is the guest we're going to be talking to next. And I want to talk about a few things, because you hear what's happening with South Africa. And so Southall has been following this very, very closely in South Africa. And I am not quite sure why we don't have him online, but we want to talk about South Africa-U.S. relations, looking at the land policy and the U.S. interference. And I think Southall is supposed to be on WhatsApp. So if we get him up on WhatsApp, I think that will be better. I'm not quite sure you can get him straight into South Africa. Shamar, could you intervene, please? I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but I feel like I'm floating. I want to talk also about Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and the apartheid legacy and the reality there. I want to look at how South Africans are reacting to these threats, and also to talk a little bit about the ANC, the governing coalition, how that is being impacted by these U.S. threats and the interference, and what are the plans there in South Africa. But I am not sure what's happening with Southall. We're standing by for that, though. He's scheduled to be on WhatsApp. This is a WhatsApp call. Shamara, could you intervene? Because we do have another WhatsApp call. And so we have another WhatsApp call, which will be my main interview this morning. So let us get this going. Kwame Nkrumah says the forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart. Africa must unite. And this is where we are. This is our thinking. You know, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. We stand with Ibrahim Traore and all African leaders who master the courage to stand up with the people against oppression, against exploitation and foreign domination. We will not stand cowardly or idly by and allow traitors among us and our oppressors to thwart the goal for full freedom and unity. Am I ready are you ready? Well, let me go to the phone lines and see if we got our brother Southall online. Southall, are you there?
I'm here, my dear, wonderful sister.
So happy that you could join us live from South Africa, my beloved brother. Thank you so much for taking the time. What a time, Southall, what a time. South Africa is going through so much. On the one hand, South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice, and the backlash has been, ridiculous. But on the other hand, we have threats coming from the United States, left, right, and center. Can you put that in perspective for me? What's really happening?
You're looking at geopolitics, probably from as far as 1652, South Africa has been a strategic place according to how it is positioned geographically. It is between the East and the West, even before the construction of the Suez Canal, where ships have to come all the way from Europe and pass through South Africa. And that is how the Dutch discovered us, because they had to stop here for refreshment station around 1652. And then fast forward, there was a time when the British and the Dutch fought over this part for its strategic purposes. And that is what is called the Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902. And then fast forward to the Cold War, it was also a very highly contested space during the Cold War between the East and the West. And also now during the BRICS configuration, South Africa is a member of BRICS. And it's also a highly contested space, and that is why a party that is controlled by the Jews of Israel and the Americans, called the Democratic Alliance, is in charge of one of the provinces. We have 9 provinces. This party is in charge of Western Cape, where Cape Town is. So, and then now they're talking about the Cape Independence Movement. They want to create a small Israel here. So there is an active, create small Israel. So what Donald Trump is saying and the PayPal mafias are doing is only pushing that, because we know that Israel always had America and Britain doing its bidding. It was the British through the Declaration who created the State of Israel, and then it is the American Senate that is being maintaining the State of Israel, and the Jewish lobby group in the United States. So South Africa is still going to be in a very long battles with these forces between the East and the West. And now the latest executive order that Donald Trump issued against the leadership of the ANC in South Africa, one of them is that South Africa is a friend of the enemies of America. South Africa is cozying up with Iran, with Hezbollah, Hamas, and with BRICS countries that will be Russia, China, India, and so forth. So South Africa is just caught up in between and in the middle of this geopolitical war and proxy war.
So this is really an introspective time for South Africa, but also a time, an opportunity. Before we get to what the opportunity might be, what is the response of the government? Because we know we do have a coalition government. Is the ANC is in a coalition with the apartheid era party. So what's happening there?
Well, you see, the ANC is a sellout political party, if truth have to be told, and for the longest time. Our current president was exposed from the moment he came into power, but we always knew, because in 1980, Oppenheimers gave him money to open the National Union of Mine Workers in order to manage the mine workers, the growing number of mine workers, which was another radicalized revolutionary force within the labor movement. Cyril Ramaphosa in 1974, when the likes of Charana Kota, the more especially, they were part of Steve Biko's organization then. When they were sent to Robben Island, Cyril Ramaphosa told the special branch police that the likes of Charana Kota, they are putting communist ideas in his head. And he's the first person on record to be released by the special branch, because the special branch don't release anyone once they arrest you. So they released him, he went home, and then in 1982 he resurfaced as a leader of the National Union of Mine Workers, a union funded by the Oppenheimers family. And then, mind you, the Oppenheimer, during last year's election, they funded about 14 black political parties in order to divide the black votes. And they did it successfully. They divided the black votes. We can't talk of black unity and so forth. And then the same Oppenheimers, they positioned him when Mandela came out of jail. He was there holding a microphone for Mandela when Mandela made his first speech in Cape Town. And then also positioned him to make him the Secretary General of the ANC. Mind you, he was never one of the 4 different division of the ANC. You know, you had the ANC in Robben Island, represented by the likes of Nelson Mandela, Govan Mbeki, Wilton Mukwai, Elias Mutsualedi, Mlangeni, all these leaders who were arrested from 1963, who formed part of the Rivonia trial list. And then you had the other faction, the other group of the ANC that was in exile. And then you had the other group of the ANC that was in the military wing. And then, of course, you have the exile, those who are operating underground in the country. So Cyril Ramaphosa was not part of any of these groups. And then in 1991, they maneuver him, they position him to become the Secretary General of the ANC. And then in 1994, they wanted to position him to be the Deputy President of the ANC, to deputize Mandela. Yet there have been questions within the ranks of the ANC as to who is this man. And usually when they ask that question, or who is this person, it means they don't know you politically. They've not not with you in the underground. They were not with you in exile. They were not with you in Robben Island. They were not with you in the military wing of the ANC. So he went on, he sulked after he couldn't be a deputy president of Mandela, and then he went into business. Mandela and others, and the Oppenheimers, they connected to him, and then he came back as a to become deputy president of Jacob Zuma. But also the ANC is always run by factions of interest. So there was a strong faction in the ANC that brought him back, and then he later did what he do best. He backbited Zuma. We end up seeing Zuma being the first black president post-apartheid to be sentenced to be sent to jail under Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. When they come up with this thing of theirs called State Capture Commission, while all the apartheid president died peacefully, no one ever went to jail for their crimes that they committed, which the United Nations declared that apartheid was a crime against humanity. But none of the white president, P.W. Botha, F.W. de Klerk, they all died peacefully post-apartheid, given state funeral. They refused to go through Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And when Jacob Zuma refused to go through the State Capture Commission, they sentenced him to jail. So these are the works of the president we have. And that is really a problem with the Black liberation movement all over Africa, is that we have a high tolerance of our own traitors.
The oppressors.
So
the revolution eats its children. And South Africa has made a mistake. Is making the same mistake that was made in Haiti after the revolution, where they all thought that France was a friend, and then OB3AH was killed. So we see this is a recurring theme with us as Africans, and I think at some point we have to break the back of that apartheid, literally. What then? Because I know leading up to the election, of course, we didn't have this conversation coming from the United States. But now with Elon Musk using his massive X platform and everything else that he has, accusing South Africa of reverse racism and all kinds of misdeeds. And we have Israel trying to get revenge on South Africa for taking it to the International Court of Justice. And we have Donald Trump saying South Africa is doing 50 different wrong things that some of them you just named out, including what South Africa needs to do with land. What is the mood on the ground, number one? What are South Africans saying, and what is the plan?
Well, we have, obviously the ANC is livid about the whole thing, but we have now one of the second biggest black opposition party created by Jacob Zuma, Umkhonto weSizwe. They were protesting the visit of Zelensky. They say Zelensky is not allowed here. He's not welcomed. They staged a huge protest. Obviously, Donald Trump and his people, they are spreading misinformation. There is no genocide of white people in South Africa. There is no even expropriation of land. These people are still discussing a parliamentary legislation that is not even yet passed. So they are using the same strategy that they used to destroy Gaddafi, and they are cooking the same plan with Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso. Remember, America have a tendency of listing a group of countries as its enemies, like running towards the overthrow of Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. They had a list of countries that they call them terrorist countries.
But they succeeded, my brother. They succeeded, and they have destroyed. I mean, slavery now is the order of the day in Libya. Iraq is a war zone. Afghanistan is left, without a central government. So they succeed, and we see what they're doing in Yemen and what they plan to do in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso, and so on. So it would seem to me that South Africa has an opportunity to unite or for unification. You talk about the party, Jacob Zuma opposition party. Is there, from what you're seeing, because you have literally, you predicted this, right? We have had many conversations. You literally predicted that something like this would happen over time. As a matter of fact, you were one of the first persons to say to me many years ago that South Africa, in short, in a few years, could possibly see a white president. And at the time, it was shocking to us. But now we're seeing that it's becoming more achievable. So what do you see as is there an opportunity for unification or unity? Or are these Malema, Zuma, what's his name, Cyril Ramaphosa, are they so vitriolic against each other that they can't see the bigger picture to unite? What's your reading of it?
They can't see the bigger picture because, you see, behind these parties, they have whites who are funding them. White capital is behind this. The very reason why we have this grand coalition, which they try to label it Government of National Unity, between the ANC and the party of apartheid, the Democratic Alliance, which we call it Democratic Apartheid, is that both of them are funded by the same people. And those people, sometimes they have, these are two parties that have two diametrically opposed policies, but their funders are telling them to work together. And because they don't want a coalition of the ANC, Zuma's party, and Malema's party. Now, Zuma convened a couple of black parties before he formed his party and say, we need to stand together as black people. And then Malema wanted him.
I think I'm losing you. Okay. Say that again. You said Malema wanted to?
Malema wanted Zuma to join him. He wanted to use Zuma's popularity to gain votes. But, African politics, they also have an element of African eldership, Now, an elder can't join a youth. Besides that, Zuma has more. This is why he decided, and he has more experience. And he needed to have a space to be able to do what he couldn't do in the ANC, because the ANC is governed by factions, multiple factions, which make it even difficult during his time as a president of the ANC. Being president of the ANC, you are beholden to factions. Some of them are funded by these big families that run South Africa, the Oppenheimers, the De Beers, the Rupert groups. So now some of the people who went on to join Zuma's party, like his secretary now, the secretary of Zuma's party is a former deputy president of Malema. So Malema started to see people leaving his party as a betrayal to him, and then he declared that Zuma's party is the enemy number one. Now, look, he jumped the white party of apartheid. There are so many small white parties here. He went straight to another black person's party to declare it to be the enemy number one. So they used to be part of what they call the Progressive Caucus. Now they've missed that opportunity to come together. They are seeing one another as enemies, although Zuma's party does not see Malema as their enemy, but Malema sees them as their enemy. But Malema have a history of working with this white party that is working with the ANC. Even before, when they wanted to remove Zuma, Malema voted with this party. Malema gave this party some votes in some municipalities in the name of saying, no, we're trying to get rid of Zuma. Zuma is the biggest problem. We'll get back to deal with these whites. But Malema, if you listen to one of his interview, he talked about the last stage, when you do revolutionary theory, something we were taught when I was a young soldier in exile, when you study revolutionary theories, you are told that the final stage of revolution is called mass insurrection, where the masses will revolt and lead revolution. Political party is going to rule them. So Malema explained that the formation of his party is to pacify the black youth anger and to make them feel like they have somebody who's representing them. Because if you don't do so, you're going to the next stage of revolution, which is a mass insurrection, which he referred to it as anarchy, because that revolution is going to eat even themselves who have long left their people. They are living in the suburbs. They are living in the opulences of Sandton. They are living in the white suburbs now because they can afford it. So they are far removed from their people. This is a problem with our liberation movements and our trade unions. You always find that the people who are leading the struggle of the poor are not themselves poor. The people who are leading the struggle of the workers are not themselves workers. They're the bourgeois leading the workers. And the people who are leading our people, they don't stay where our people stay. You elect a person as a councillor in your ward here. The moment you become a councillor, he doesn't stay with you here to see your problems of water, electricity, service delivery, the collection of rubbishes and raids and so forth. They move and go and stay in the suburb. Just like where Zuma, Malema, and Ramaphosa stay. They stay in some white ward. That ward is not even controlled by the ANC or economic freedom fighters. The ward that Ramaphosa, they live like a couple of houses apart from each other. Malema said every now and then he take a walk and go and visit Ramaphosa. So these people have taken on the west side of politics to say politics is a game. You know, in public they appear to be fighting. In private they go and watch soccer together, drink beer together, and do all of these things and plot how they are going to do their charade and performances.
So where does
of them?
Yeah, go ahead.
So both of them, where they stay, is a ward that is not controlled by either Malema's party or Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC, but is controlled by the same Democratic Alliance.
Same apartheid party. So where does that leave South Africa? What's the way forward? How do you see this progressing?
Well, what is interesting about South Africans is that they are highly radicalized. And that is why even Zuma's party, with the packaging that it came with, you know, what is interesting about this is that the ANC came up with political freedom. It did not go to economic freedom and other freedoms. And then the Malema's party came and talked about economic freedom. They're dealing with freedom piecemeal. Now, Zuma's party is mentioning the rest now. It's a combination of Pan-Africanism, of Sobukwe's PAC, Steve Biko's Black Consciousness. Is trying to be a combination of everything that was and that was left outside. So they're talking the right language. They're appealing to the masses. They're practically the biggest party. They've surpassed even Malema's party.
But what has changed with Zuma? Because Zuma was president for many years. What has changed? I mean, is this a baptism? Is this a new person?
What? Not baptism. This is what I try to bring to attention, that you see, when you are a leader of the ANC, you don't have outright rights to implement whatever you want to implement, because you are beholden to factions. There are factions, and factions in the ANC are controlled by capital, by white people with money. It's them who are deciding policy direction. So Zuma's hands were tied up when he was the president of the ANC. His hands were tied up. Now that he's got his own political party, he is in a position to do things that you couldn't do when he was the ANC president. I remember one time he made a speech and said, the problems of black people in South Africa, while he was still an ANC president, he said the problem of black people in South Africa began the moment Christianity was introduced here and colonialism. And the Christian within the ANC had to force him to apologize. So now he's in charge and he refused to take his party to a conference. He's appointing people. He's completely in charge. That is what makes the difference. When he was a president of the ANC, he wasn't completely in charge because the ANC talk about a thing called collective leadership. So you can't unilaterally make certain pronouncement or decision because you are part of the collective. And this collective is made of 6 people on top, what they used to call top 6. Now they've added to top 7. And then you have 44 members of the National Executive Committee. You have 44 members of the National Working Committee. So now difference now is that Zuma is in charge of his party.
What's the power? What's the power of the party? And can it challenge a Malema or a Ramaphosa? And will it join with Malema, at least?
Zuma's party. They wanted to, but Malema, because some prominent members of Malema's party went to join Zuma. And Malema became bitter and declared Zuma's party to be his enemy. So they've missed the opportunity to unite. But again, Zuma's party has a majority. Actually, they were robbed. They were the ones who won the election. And they have a running case in court that the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, robbed their votes. Even the province of KwaZulu, where Zuma come from, they've won that province out with outright majority. But the ANC played its trick and put up together small parties together and form government instead of Zuma's party.
So Cyril Ramaphosa, just so our listeners understand, had a choice to form a coalition with people like Jacob Zuma, problems aside, and possibly Malema, but chose to unite with the apartheid party. This was a choice that Ramaphosa made, and now it is coming to bite him in the ass. And this is really critical to me.
It's a choice that is a choice that is made by them, because Cyril Ramaphosa and most of our politicians are controlled by white monopoly capital. They are controlled by what I usually refer to them as the 3-headed beast, which is capital, market, and investors. These people come to canvass votes from the black people, but once they are in office, they are now beholden to capital, to investors, to market. Now, they said if Cyril Ramaphosa form coalition with Jacob Zuma and Julius Malema, they call it the Doomsday Coalition. They say investors are going to flee out of this country. We're going to have joblessness, all of this type of white supremacy, racism strategies that they are using all the while. Now, they were forced that Ramaphosa and the DA, the Democratic Alliance, the apartheid party, form coalition because both of them are funded by the same business. Remember, Mandela and the rest, they did not undo the economic structure of South Africa.
Yes.
So the economy is still controlled by white people. And they're using this economy to scare us that people will lose jobs, that the economy will collapse. The country will collapse. You'll be like the next Zimbabwe, type of thing. So to get them together in this coalition, their funders told them that the investors will run away. Capital will fly. The market will drop. And our rent, our money, our South African currency is called rand. So our rent is very political. Even when they were trying to remove Jacob Zuma, they will play with it. They will manipulate it, and then they will be like, oh, the rent is now 18 rand equals to the dollar. The rent is 19 rand, and so forth and so forth. So they manipulate currency. They manipulate economics because our economic structure is very much European. Is very much Western, is still controlled by the IMF and the World Bank and the London School of Economics. So these are the people who determine the policy direction by using capital.
And of
So
course,
they told them.
So that explains the rhetoric coming from the White House, which includes South Africa's being the S in BRICS, and the fact that they're making these connections with Russia and China and so on. Where do we go from here? What is your hope, and what would you want to see? Only because we're totally out of time, but where do you see it all going?
Our hopes is with the masses of our people, because our people are very radicalized. South Africans are very radicalized beyond political parties, and that is why anyone with radical ideas can always mobilize them. Like in the case of, people thought, Jacob Zuma is a damaged goods, through those accusations of corruption, state capture. But Jacob Zuma is the first one to bring the ANC below 50%. It is at 40% electoral-wise. Jacob Zuma has formed a party in 5 months. It surpasses Julius Malema, who's supposed to be the most popular. Jacob Zuma is the most popular, and he's saying the right thing. It is suspected that is funded by Putin, because they are friends with Putin, that Russia is funding the whole project. So what we are going to see is Jacob Zuma's party is here to stay for the longest. And at the moment, it is aligning with another one, the African Transformation Movement. At the moment, it seems to be the hope for the people of South Africa, because the Malema's party, it flip-flop. He's a flip-flopper of note. So he can't be trusted. He say the right things. He talk left and walk right. That is Malema's politics.
We're paying special attention. He has made a call, to segue a bit, for a march, and South Africans generally, I think, have bought into this march on behalf and in solidarity with Ibrahim Traore on the 30th of April.
But 2 months ago, he was making recommendation that Traore and the rest should be removed. They are Democrats. They don't believe in coups and all of these things. 2 months ago.
But now he has come out swinging on behalf of Ibrahim Traore. So we'll overlook it for a minute. But I do know what you're talking about. That is so true. But yes,
the black world should not be fooled by, white system always places people like that, people like Malema who can articulate things, who can appeal to the masses of the people, but they are placed there to confuse the people. So
I am not questioning that, because you know how hard we have tried to get him on this program, and he has never agreed to come on. Maybe Jacob Zuma will come on, and that will tell us who he is, because we judge people when they decide to come on this program, whether they come on or not. So get me Jacob Zuma. Toto, my brother, thank you so much. We're totally out of time. I really appreciate you in South Africa. And I will definitely keep in touch with you, because I see that these are really pretty serious times in South Africa.
Yeah, no, I'm going to send you the number of Jacob Zuma's Secretary General, the former Deputy President of Malema, and probably through him you will be able to get Jacob Zuma.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right.
Give thanks. Our brother, Sao Haramanuba. We take a break. Elections. The Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal is calling on the Prime Minister to honor his 2023 commitment made in Parliament to establish job descriptions for members of Parliament, and to do so before the upcoming general elections. It continues, following the controversial 2023 MP salary increases that occurred without performance metrics. The Prime Minister promised accountability mechanisms that would justify future compensation decisions. In Parliament on June 20, 2023, the Prime Minister defended his policy to increase the salaries. He said, and I quote, "Along with improved compensation, there must be a well-articulated and transparent performance measurement and accountability framework. The other side of the compensation reform is the implementation of the performance-based system and an accountability framework to be implemented in the next 2 years." End of quote. And the press release continues. Since that commitment, draft job descriptions of members of Parliament and cabinet ministers were tabled. A joint select committee was established, 2 public consultations and 2 committee meetings were convened. However, since the deadline for public submissions elapsed in December 2023, 15 months have elapsed with no meetings for public review. JAM says voters are now faced with the prospect of selecting representatives without clear standards to evaluate either past performance or future performance. This leaves taxpayers in a position of being unable to hold MPs accountable, even as they are compelled to foot the bill for their salaries. Oops. In response to this, JAM commissioned a public survey in which 1,757 Jamaicans participated. The survey sought to assess citizens' understanding of parliamentary responsibilities, particularly as they relate to corruption prevention. The findings revealed critical gaps in public awareness as well as clear priorities for them. The findings revealing the majority believe that 1, MPs monitoring public spending was more important than creating laws. 2, ensuring that the government implements the recommendations from watchdog agency Auditor General Integrity Commission reports was a priority above functions. 3, the biggest obstruction to parliamentarians being effective in fighting corruption would be the direct benefits that an MP and their associates obtain from corrupt acts. And 4, if one had to make a choice, a focus on national projects and programs was more important than the MP's focus on local constituency development. And it goes on. They say the survey also exposed very significant knowledge gaps. 75 of respondents had little to no familiarity with the parliamentary committees responsible for combating corruption, while 73% were unfamiliar with the anti-corruption legislation. Then that not deliberate? I mean, said apart there. That not deliberate business, the education system and the miseducation system set up for this. You see, now they have an act that has been tabled and passed in Parliament for the Jamaica Teaching Council. It's an interesting situation. We have to look at that act again and again and again and again. I want to talk a little bit about it because obviously there is a big failure in the miseducation system, which they call the education system here in Jamaica. And through this act, I haven't read it all, but I've seen enough to know that from what I've seen, they are putting the responsibility slowly on the teachers. So this is like it's phenomenal what they're about to do with this act. And people are celebrating this act. But there's something radically wrong with it. Because if you don't fix the system that is creating the problems, how do you expect that if you give teachers license, it's going to make a difference? Let me take a break. Activists and advocates and so on. But from a wider perspective, I think there's some things lacking. And that has to do with the ripple effects, if you will. Guyana's oil spill. How could this threaten the Caribbean's future? But before we go to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about Guyana's offshore oil production boom. Can you put that in context for me and tell us what's happening there?
Well, of course, I would prefer to be talking about cricket here on a Sunday morning. Especially coming from Sabina Park there, it's one of my favorite places, Sabina Park. But anyway, no, it's I think that this is one of the if not or arguably the most significant discovery of oil in our lifetime. There was discovery in Guyana, exploration going on in Guyana, I think since in the 1960s, and then suddenly in 2015, the oil discovery was announced, and since then the reserves have gone up significantly to about over 11 billion barrels in place, but they still continue to discover oil. So we were expecting hopefully at least about 20 billion barrels, which is a major reserves that can take us maybe 30 years or so.
Wow.
But it depends on technology, because I've learned that, when technology can even increase that reserve. Because when you're with the current technology, you might be lucky to recover, let's say, 50% of what's in the ground. But with improved technology, you can start recovering some more oil. So there's no telling. But it's significant in the sense of its economic value, not only to Guyana but the rest of the Caribbean. And I think why this type of conversation is so important, because that's all we see. We hear about oil, and we see the Saudi Arabians of the country, the Norways of the world, and we believe, wealth has come to the region. However, that wealth can evaporate if a disaster occurs. Unfortunately, people do not look, at the environmental impacts or health impacts when these things, when we get these opportunities. All we see is the money that it brings in. The good news, the good news is that we have the engineering and science and technology to operate these developments very, very safely. But it's left to the oil companies and the government to make sure that the companies follow the rule of law, they follow international standards, and that's where the problem lies.
All right, help our, we're going to go to the problem, and I want to go right there. But first of all, help our listeners to understand how this works, how offshore drilling in deep water fields increases spill risks. This is not something that we think about in the Caribbean waters. So how does
it's not, and you mean how well in our particular case, meaning in the Caribbean. Yes, a lot of people think of oil. If you I don't know, when you go to America, you see these oil producing rigs and the jacks, we call it jacks. Producing oil on land, but you can produce oil also offshore, because it's still earth. There's earth below the sea. In Guyana's case, the offshore it's about 120 miles offshore Guyana. It's not even close to Guyana. It's probably about the same distance from Trinidad. The block that they're producing from right now is Trinidad. So what you do, you have these massive drill ships. Or you could, in some cases, like in Trinidad, they had they set up these oil rigs. They're not ships, but rigs. They build structures and they drill from there. In Guyana, you have to go over a mile deep of water. With the ships come in, and they're sitting on a mile deep of water, but then they go down there with pipes and everything else, and then when they get to the ocean floor, they have to drill another 2 miles. Just imagine that, another 2 miles below the ocean floor to get to the oil that we're getting to. So all kinds of things can happen. To put things into perspective here in terms of the risk to the Caribbean, we have I would say, at least one ship come 2027. Right now, Guyana is producing about 650,000 barrels per day, which is a major amount of oil. By year 2027, I think we plan to double that, which means that we will have at least one ship, listen to this, one ship traversing the Caribbean, 1 to 2, maybe 1, sometimes 2, who knows, sometimes maybe 3 ships. And I'm talking about massive loads, massive ships traversing the Caribbean with 1 million barrels of oil on board. 1 million barrels of oil on board. And as we may recall, you remember that incident that we had recently in Trinidad, where we had a ship that sank guess how much that had? That only had 30,000 barrels.
Wow.
We're talking about a ship,
Yes.
2 ships every single day that traverses with 1 million barrels.
Dr. Vincent, hold that point for me. Let me take a quick time signal and come right back.
Yes.
Get more miles with the Department of Energy with over 30 years of service on the phone lines with us. And already the information we're getting, you see how you can be excited in 2 different ways. One is that, wow, look at what's happening in Guyana. But the risks that are likely to come with this are also things that we need to consider. So you're saying, Dr. Vincent, because we just our listeners recall the Trinidad and Tobago, that ship that went, that accident that happened recently, and we saw how long they took to clear that up and the damage that caused. What's the situation with that now? Is there still a problem there?
Well, I haven't heard anything recently. But I'm sure because I know that I was in a program with the person who I can't remember his title, but that was in charge of the whole operation from Tobago, and so they were working diligently. I haven't heard anything in terms of the cleanup, but the message that people need to pay attention to is that was only 30,000 barrels.
Yes.
And that was a one-time thing that happened. So the possibility exists that if you have a ship that is traveling through the crew, 1 or 2 ships every single day with 1 million barrels, remember these ships are, it's a human factor. These are human beings who operate these ships. Anything can happen. We had a similar situation with Exxon Valdez. In here, right here in the United States, and some other incidents. But so that there's a major risk to the Caribbean, and that's why the Caribbean people ought to be paying attention. I don't think that outside of Guyana, I don't think the Caribbean folks on the islands understand, because if anything happens, as a matter of fact, Guyana would be less vulnerable than the Caribbean islands if something happens in the Caribbean. Because Guyana, in terms of the current flow, it flows away from Guyana, not towards Guyana, except it's touching up on the coastline a little bit. It flows away from Guyana into the oceans. Trinidad would be wiped out if we have an oil spill. The first country that would be gone.
Did you say Trinidad would be wiped out?
Yeah, their entire eastern shore. And the models are there in the environmental impact assessment. But if you look at it, let's say we have an oil spill at one of the oil wells, and you remember the famous Macondo spill in the Gulf with flowing. The well was flowing for 89 days. What happened there? But if you look at, let's say you have a spill right now in Guyana, offshore Guyana. Trinidad would be the first country to go. The entire eastern shore from north to south would be wiped out with oil. Wow. Then you have Venezuela coast, and then it goes all the way to Jamaica, by the way.
But here we are. I was waiting for you to get there. So explain to us what would happen to Jamaica, because this is not just you. Well, obviously you're an expert and a scientist, but this is what the maps are showing. This is how do we come to Trinidad?
Yeah, that's what because we have to model. For every one of these projects, you have to do what is called an environmental impact assessment. Yeah. And so you can see the flow models, as we call it, the entire flow, because of the ocean current and everything, where it would take that oil flow, and it would take it all the way to Jamaica. And of course, Trinidad, like I said, Trinidad is just as close to the operations as Guyana is. So Trinidad would be the first to go. It's right in the line of Trinidad.
So that would be devastating. That would be devastating for Trinidad. So, what would the likely impact be for Jamaica?
Oh, well, it depends. Of course, it depends on the magnitude of it. For example, and I will have to look and see where the ships pass. But let's say, there are two incidents that occur that can cause that oil spill. First of all, it could be at the operation itself, at the wellhead itself, like we had in the Macondo, or like I said, with the ships passing through. And if the ship is passing close to Jamaica, and there is something that happens, then you would be, you would be impacted. It depends on where the ship is. Mm-hmm. Run against a reef or run ashore or something of the sort, and like I said, the one thing you can't cater for is the human factor. Somebody, the captain goes, had a nice night out night before, and then he or she comes to work next day and they fell asleep. All these type of things. It's the human factor that you cannot predict that can cause these type of events. However, it's not a case where you do not have things that you can put in place to mitigate those incidents. But, so we've got to pay attention, and it starts with, for example, in Guyana's case, it starts with oversight, proper oversight. And that's one of the things that is very distressing right now, that I and others have been criticizing, where we are not comfortable that Exxon is following the rule of law. Exxon is even violating the laws of Guyana in terms of operating above the safe operating limit that is prescribed in the environmental impact assessment, which is the Bible. You must follow that. So if you look at the environmental impact assessment, it says, for example, that for one of the operations, the safe operating limit is 120,000 barrels per day for one of the wells.
Yes.
Exxon is operating at 165,000 barrels per day.
Well,
but they're allowed to do that because the government is allowing them to do that. So that's against the law. Here is the law saying one thing in what we call the Bible of the operations, which is the environmental impact assessment. You cannot, in the United States, anytime you exceed that safety envelope in the United States, you shut down, and you never know if you would start again. In Guyana, Exxon is allowed to operate 40% above that limit, and the government of Guyana is just sitting back and letting it out, which increases the risk. It increases the risk of an incident. And then on the backside, the government has cancelled what was in place before, which was having an unlimited guarantee to cover an oil spill coming from the oil company. We put it in law when I was there. We put it into law that Exxon will give us a guarantee. They signed off in the permit that they will cover whatever the spill costs. And by the way, to put things into perspective, that oil spill by British Petroleum in the Gulf of Mexico cost $145 billion and still counting. Okay?
Wow.
So here we are in India. So we said you must have a guarantee, a parent company guarantee, because here's what most people don't understand. Exxon itself, the big company Exxon, name is not on any document. So they are free of any liability. And that's what these major companies do. They form these little subsidiaries to conduct their operations. So if anything happens, they're insulated from liability. As a matter of fact, that company is incorporated in the Bahamas, not in Guyana. So, which is Exxon Mobil, Guyana Limited. So if something happens, they do not have any assets. So what we did when I was in Guyana, we imposed that Exxon must sign what we call a parent company guarantee, which means that we drag Exxon into it and say, your company that is operating, who's signing all these documents, they have no assets to cover an oil spill. Exxon, you, the big boy with the deep pockets, have to give us a guarantee that you will cover it if they can. So we put that into place. Would you believe as soon as the government changed, they decided to cancel that, and there was a major lawsuit with a landmark decision with the judge really lambasted the government. And would you believe, you would think that the government will walk away, and use that to save face.
Yes.
And the government joined with Exxon to appeal the case.
Are you serious?
No, as a matter of fact, they went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice for them to get standing to enjoin Exxon in the case. So the appeal case, the case is still in the appeal, and while
at the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Well, no, I think they were allowed to enjoin them. So it's not there yet. It's appealed in Guyana. So that the case needs to be heard in Guyana. But if there was a question as to whether the government could join Exxon in the appeal in the case, and then as they move forward, and then they went all the way to the Supreme Court, to the CCJ, to get that standing, and they got it. So, but the point is, the government joined with Exxon to go against the people's interest and the Caribbean interest.
But this is the point I want to underscore. That this is against the people of Guyana and the people of the Caribbean, including Jamaica. So there is a wider interest.
But you said, and I think I've been making these commentaries and giving lectures and all, and every time I always bring up that the Caribbean is not paying attention, and this year will affect the Caribbean just as Guyana, or even worse than Guyana, but they're not paying attention. They believe that it's Guyana's problem. There's a technical organization, the Oil and Gas Network, with some really eminent scientists and engineers. They're mostly in the diaspora, but I'm part of it. And we wrote letters to Mia Motley. We wrote letters to the former Prime Minister of Trinidad,
Rowley.
Yeah, Motley Rowley wrote to CARICOM, and we did not even get a courtesy of a response outlining how it's important, and how this year is so important that they pay attention.
But Jamaica is going to be heading CARICOM. Sorry to interrupt. Jamaica is going to be heading CARICOM next, and I think that is right on our doorsteps. I suppose put this in Jamaica's lap and see what happens. I'm listening to you, Brother Vincent, Dr. Vincent Adams, and the thing that came to me is that Caribbean people themselves, usually sometimes it has to come from the ground up, are not paying attention. Yeah. And even when we say this is likely to happen, maybe I have not thought about what the consequences will be in terms of the environmental impact, the economic and the social fallout. So help us to understand that, and let's go back, because that is what is missing.
Absolutely. Just think, and if you recall what happened with the Exxon Valdez, it would wipe out the ecological system in the ocean ecology, the fish life, which means your fishing industry would be gone. Not only your fishing industry, but also your tourism. Caribbean is heavily reliant upon tourism. We saw what happened in Tobago. And Tobago was just a little bitty patch in terms of relative size in the Caribbean, and it was chaos. They lost, I can't remember the numbers in terms of businesses, because tourists had to remove themselves from the hotel, and I don't know how long that lasted. But again, that was just a minuscule, minuscule in comparison to what could happen. So it was, your fishing would be destroyed, and of course your tourism would be destroyed, and your ecology, your ecology would be destroyed. So it would be devastating. So it's not only the environmental part, it's the economic part of it. And then the whole question is getting back to this guarantee, which is very important. Let's say, this holds up and Exxon is allowed to get away with not providing the funds to clean up everything. Who will do the cleaning up? Are the countries, each country got to foot their own bill? What happens if these countries decide to sue Guyana? Where's Guyana going to get that money from? So all of this money that is flowing right now could be lost in a day. If there's, if there's any, really money that is available. So the whole thing, it impacts the entire Caribbean, and that's the biggest message that we all have to pay attention to. It's not only Guyana where the impact will be felt. It's the impact will be felt, like I said, more so in the Caribbean islands, and not Guyana. The ocean current carries through the Caribbean and away from Guyana, except for a small part of the Guyana's coastline.
So that we're all
Caribbean people
impacted.
must be paying attention.
So in the letters, for example, that was sent to Keith Rowley and to Mayor Motley, what were you underscoring? What were you saying?
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. We were telling them about the threat, and we were saying that they need, because of the issues that I raised, where the in our opinion, again, the government is not doing its job of oversight to make sure that Exxon followed the rules and the laws and to make sure that this thing is operated safely. Remember what I said initially, that we welcome oil and we should welcome oil.
Yeah.
However, it has to be done safe in a safe and environmentally sound manner. And the technology, the engineering and science and technology is there to make that happen, but you have to comply with it. And you have to comply with the law. So that's why we are really concerned that the government of Guyana is not doing that. As a matter of fact, the past administration, this is not politics. These are facts. Because, after I retired, I went back home to set up institutions, strong institutions. I didn't go there for a career. Because my career, I had my career here. Yes. But I go there because to give back to the country and to set up strong institutions because we did not have the expertise. So we set up very strong institutions, and especially to monitor and to protect the environment and the health safety of people. And so the things that we put in place, all the guardrails were torn down as soon as we left, as soon as the government that I work for left office in 2020. Everything was torn down. You remember I told you about the oil? Yes. Them operating above the safe operating limit. In non-compliance, outside of the law. Remember I told you? So that increases the risk of a spill. And then on the back end, they removed the unlimited liability coverage that Exxon had to cover. They removed that, even though Exxon had agreed with the past.
And this is what I cannot wrap my head around. What is Guyana thinking, and why did they make that decision? If Exxon has already signed off on this,
of course, there's lots of Guyana is because the other thing about oil, it brings a lot of corruption. So the other thing, but it's not only about the ocean. When you produce oil, it comes up with a lot of toxic water. The water is hot. It's about 3 times the ocean, the temperature of the ocean. It has all kinds of toxic material, lead, mercury, name it. It is radioactive. So the standard practice is to reinject that water back from where it came into the reservoir. This current government removed that requirement, and guess what they're doing with that water? They're dumping it into the ocean.
Oh, goodness.
I am not kidding. So on top of all the toxic material, it's also being dumped with concentrations of oil in it. For example, for every million barrels of water dumped, it's also dumping 40 barrels of oil. So over the life of the field, if you do rough calculations with the billions of barrels that will be dumped in the ocean, over the life of the field, they would have dumped several hundreds of thousands of pure oil into the ocean. Not to conquer for the high temperatures, and the other impacts with the chemicals from what they're dumping. As a matter of fact, in Guyana, we've already, over the past 7 years, we've already seen a major decline in our fishing catch. And the fishermen are complaining, they're getting out of the business. Guyana is now going to those, farming on land for fish and that type of stuff. But again, that's the Caribbean thing. And who knows what it's going to do to the ecology. And
that's what I was about to ask you. What's the long-term impact of this? Obviously, this again is not just a Guyana problem because of where Guyana is, and you talk about, our currents and how things flow off Guyana, is that we're all going to be impacted by this. So in terms of the toxics and the toxins and the toxic sludge that's coming out and dumped in the ocean, what's the long-term impact on this, and how is this likely to affect the rest of the Caribbean?
Oh, destroy you. Look, here's a good metric for you.
Yes.
Up to recently, Exxon, because Exxon, they have input to the, it's all about this environmental impact assessment. This is the Bible. It does all the analysis, the safety, and that's why you have to follow it. It's the law. Do you know what it says? That dumping this water will result in the killing of millions of fish eggs.
Wow.
Did you hear what I just said?
Yes.
So if you kill the fish eggs,
yes,
you can't get any fish.
How is Guyana allowed to disregard the EPA?
But that is why we wrote near Mockley and Rowley and CARICOM telling them, please pay attention. And they did not even respond. But it's all about, and that's, you see, the danger thing is all about money. The only thing that people are seeing is the money. They're not seeing the danger of these operations. And the thing is, like I said, it could be done safely if you follow the rule of law and international standards.
What would that? Before I go to what that would include, following the rule of law and international standards. Let's talk a little bit about the public health concerns. But obviously, we're talking about, the environmental impact and so on. But when you go to toxins and even oil spills, but toxins and toxic waste in particular that's being dumped in the ocean, we're looking at some serious public health concerns there also, aren't we? Wherever we are.
Well, let me give you another one. It's not only in the water. How about in the air? So guess what happens? When you produce oil again, for every barrel, you produce a mass of millions of cubic feet of natural gas comes with this oil. So, for example, every barrel of oil that comes up, every barrel brings up with it like a big room, because when it comes to the surface, it expands. So every barrel brings up one room full of gas, of toxic gas. That gas contains over 200 contaminants, okay? So if you flare it, flaring was prohibited under the previous administration. You could not flare unless it's an emergency and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They are being allowed to flare that gas into the atmosphere as long as they can pay, and then it charges paltry fee for flaring excess gas.
What's flaring?
Well, okay. So when the gas comes up, again, just like the water, you're supposed to reinject it back into the reservoir, okay, where the oil came, where the gas comes from.
Yeah.
So what you do, you burn it off into the atmosphere. It goes through there's a chimney.
Mm-hmm.
It goes through there. You burn it. If you fly over an oil rig, you're gonna see a big flame.
Yes.
That is the oil that the gas that they're burning up.
Mm-hmm.
But when it goes into the atmosphere, so all of that gas is going into the millions of cubic feet every day. It goes into the atmosphere. And like I said, it contains over 200 contaminants. But here's what it does. You're breathing in all this. Of course, it adds to climate change. And that's one of the major issues. It adds to climate change. It goes into the atmosphere. Then if you've got it, it causes your respiratory problems, especially if you're asthmatic and that type of thing. But listen to this. It's acidic gas. It has it has these acidic components. It gets with the moisture and it forms acid. So when it falls down back, especially we live in tropical countries where we get a lot of rainfall, it comes down back as acid rain, meaning that the rain that comes down is acid. So it falls into your ocean again, and it falls into your farms, agriculture. It falls on your rooftop if you got metal. Your automobile, if it's metal, it's rusted, and so you're getting it's an impact from not only from the water but also from the air that you're breathing. Would you believe when I was at the EPA, when Exxon, I'm going to just show you, that is why we must have competent, capable, and strong managers to manage the oil sector in that country. Would you believe when I was head there?
Yes.
They were coming for approving one of the projects, and flaring. This to them it didn't mean anything. Flaring, they said, "Well, okay, they're going to flare." And I told them, "Absolutely not. You will re-inject that gas back into the reservoir." And they had it in writing, by the way. It's not only what he told me. They had it in writing that it's okay to flare because Guyana is a carbon sink, meaning that we are clean. We are not saturated. We are a carbon sink, so we're clean and we can.
Yes, not yet.
That's right. We have the capacity to accept contaminant because our atmosphere is clean. That's basically what that man said, and I hit the roof.
Wow.
But those are the kinds of things that we have to have, make it, put in those kind of stringencies. The other thing is, I mean, look, when I was there in Guyana, we imposed upon Exxon well, you remember the Macondo still it flowed for you to 9 days, right? So they couldn't stop it. So they invented, because of that, what is called a capping stack. A big heavy metal part, about 50 to 100 tons piece of metal. It's like a lid. You put it in a cap, you put it in a bottle or something.
Yes.
So that was invented so that now you've got something that if a well blows out and starts flowing, you can go put that cap on top of it. Well, when we were there, we imposed that Exxon, when we asked Exxon, which means that the most important thing is to get that piece of equipment to the site as soon as possible, right? To stop the flow. Well, we told Exxon to give us the minimum time. They came up with 20 days, and we said, no, we need much less than that. We agreed that we took it down to 3 days. They agreed to that 3 days, which means that you might have a 3-day flow, but if this thing works, it get there in 3 days and it stop it. Well, we even had it coming out to Trinidad because that's the best place to have it. It's a heavy piece, so you gotta have a lot of infrastructure to store it. Anyway, so it would have taken us 3 days to get it from Trinidad to get it on site. Do you know what happens when the current government took over? They tripled it. And then they made Exxon triple it to 9 days instead.
Wow.
So you have another extra 6 days of oil flowing if something happens. But it's for that kind of an attitude.
It's very interesting to me. It seems to me
heartless, callous.
Exxon must have the campaign. We have to look at campaign financing and see what Exxon did behind the scene. But let me take a quick break and come back. Dr. Vincent Adams, energy expert and scientist on the line. Energy expert and scientist, former senior manager at the United States Department of Energy with over 30 years of service. We're talking about Guyana's oil booms. Obviously, it has captured global headlines. And we have discussed that in this space many times. We've talked about the promising economic transformation for Guyana and how we could get some off it, off the back of all of it. But just beneath the surface, as we're hearing today, of this new prosperity, there is a growing concern What if something goes wrong? How could a disaster at sea impact not just Guyana, but the Caribbean Sea and the Caribbean islands itself, the lifeblood of our islands, our economies, our cultures? Dr. Vincent, I want to talk a minute because I mentioned campaign financing going to the break. I want to back up and go back at ExxonMobil, because campaign financing aside, who you're buying off, who you're bribing, who you're paying, and I'm not suggesting that they did, but they probably did. There must be global standards, social responsibility, and we'd expect that a massive global conglomerate like ExxonMobil would be forced to operate within certain global standards. So why not so in Guyana?
Well, and that's been, and it's not only Guyana suffers that type of thing. These companies, they come in and they take advantage of countries such as Guyana because, they come in and then, of course, the corruption is rampant. Like in the United States, for example, at least before now, we've got all kinds of checks and balances. I, as a government official, could not even take a soda pop from any contractor that is involved with our contracts, and we were probably the largest contracting agency in the whole world, in terms of the hundreds of billions of dollars in contracts that we had. So the checks and balances, and it's institutionalized. If anybody get caught taking anything, a meal or any, we are disciplined up to and including prosecution and removal. Not in countries such as Guyana and Exxon, and they know it. Look, when I was in the position that I was in the United States, I dealt with the presidents and CEOs of the Exxons of the world. And it used to gall me, if we go out and, from time to time you socialize. But these guys would be, and ladies would be laughing about how stupid these developing countries are and what they can get away with. So when I went again, I had that at the back of my mind, and I was gonna, it wasn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So they take advantage of these countries because of their vulnerability, their poverty, and everybody wants to get rich, and the corruption starts. So and that is why I said strong institutions and strong management, people to carry out the wishes of those institutions, and the rules and laws set forth by those institutions are the key. That's what's the key. And the Exxons of the world, they respect that. They would follow that, just like they did then, in the past administration when I was there. Because my first rule to them, when Exxon came, when I arrived, my first meeting was what I said, we will not accept anything less than what you have to abide with in the United States. That was my rule. And they accepted. You know what? The guy, the president, and then said, yes, I understand. But, this is what, whatever the country wants, and this is what they have been accepting. That's what he told me. This is what they have been accepting. So the standard changed. And I'm not, it's not that I'm bragging about it, but it's just because that I was exposed to what that standard should be.
Of course.
So when I went to Guyana, and I put that standard in place, but they respected that. So after I left, everything, because remember, Exxon doesn't care about Guyana. Exxon and those, all they care about, they don't come to Guyana to discover oil and produce oil because they like Guyana and they want Guyana to get rich. No. As a matter of fact, Guyana is not even getting, Guyana out, that the whole contract, I had advised that contract should be discarded. But that whole country, do you know how much of that oil Guyana is getting? Guyana is getting 14.5%. Exxon is getting 85.5%. Guyana is getting 14.5%. So it's not even as if Guyana is getting a fair shake, which has caused a whole lot of problems too. But in terms of institutions, I want to, because I don't want to let it sound as if it's my opinion or other people's
Yes,
opinion.
let's
Listen
talk
to what
about
the
it.
judge.
Yes.
Listen to what the judge said. This is the judge, a veteran judge in Guyana that heard that case.
Yes.
Where the two citizens filed when Exxon wasn't following the rules.
Go ahead.
Listen to what the judge said. The judge said, the government is submissive and relegated itself to a state of laxity and abdicated its responsibilities, thereby putting this nation and its people to grave potential danger of calamitous disaster.
Disaster. Yes.
Listen to this. He said the Environmental Protection Agency has descended into a state of slumber at the critical juncture of an emerging oil sector and has, at every juncture, engaged in a course of action to undermine and erode the terms of condition of its own permit.
This is phenomenal to me, though, as I listen. It is reading like Jamaica, though, in terms of our own issues that we have here. But this is a clear and present danger. So that... Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, look, listen to this one. It says, notwithstanding these grave allegations of dereliction of its functions and potential calamitous consequences, the government has adopted a stance of avoidance, concealment, and secrecy, and in unison with Exxon.
That's a point.
So, I mean, this didn't come from me. This came from the judge's decision. And this was the judge's decision. You would have thought that the embarrassment would have been so bad that even heads would have rolled. No, they went ahead, they dug in and appealed the case.
Brother Vincent, at the risk of repeating ourselves, because I know the listenership to this program, right? So we know we do have the academia. We know we have politicians and their handlers. And this is why I want you to go again and explain to us what it is that Exxon should be doing and is not doing, and what is the role and responsibility of CARICOM, and if not, individual countries in protecting ourselves and preparing for a possible disaster.
Sure. Well, the first thing that Exxon, it just might sound strange, okay? Yes. But I do not even blame Exxon. Exxon will do whatever is in the best interest of their company. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is for them to make money.
Yes.
It's who has the authority over Exxon and directs Exxon. Mm-hmm. And it's a very easy comparison, like what I said before. When I was there with that type of a knowledge and they understood that. They knew where I came from. And they know that they weren't going to get away with that type of stuff, behavior.
Yes.
So like I said, you will not do anything that you less than what you have to buy within the United States. However, but we lay down, meaning the past administration, lay down we lay down the framework. We put the guardrails in place. So all that this government has to do is just pick it up and continue. But so I do not blame Exxon. Exxon will do whatever they can get away with. Exxon is not following the rule of law because the government is allowing them to not follow the rule of law.
So
I mentioned a couple of examples.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of examples. In not following the rule of law, they're even enhancing the danger of an oil spill. Like, how could you produce above the safe operating limit defined in the environmental impact assessment, which is law and the Bible? How could you flare gas into the atmosphere when the international standards say that you should re-inject it back in the reservoir? How could you dump toxic hot radioactive water, the oil water, into the ocean when the international standards say that you should re-inject it back into the reservoir? How could you how could you triple, what was day before in terms of that capping stock or rising within 3 days? How could you triple that time to increase the number of days that oil would be flowing in the case of an oil spill? How could you go against making Exxon responsible for the full cost of covering the cost of cleaning up an oil spill? Now, that is why it's so important. And again, the most important point that I want to leave with, I've been attending on all of these forums that I've been on, especially Caribbean Forum.
Yes.
That Caribbean people had better pay attention, because this year it has more serious impact to their countries, the islands, than Guyana, because of the current flow. So they better get involved, and that is why we wrote near Motley, and Rowley and CARICOM. But apparently they think that that's a no. Never mind. These are people who are just troublemakers, and all they see is the wealth. But that wealth can evaporate very fast if you've got to be responsible. Not to mention the health effects while this is happening. With the air that people are breathing in, with the acid rain that is falling, the fish that is disappearing, all the fish heads that are dying, which is documented, by the way. I'm not making this stuff up, and then you hear what the judge says. That's what's going on. So the Caribbean people, one of the things that I was, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I was going to do when I was heading the EPA in Guyana, one of the things that I was moving forward with was this environmental impact assessment is a critical piece of document, because what it does, it identifies all of the risks, and all of the stakeholders are involved in putting it together. I was going to get all of the Caribbean islands involved in putting together that EIA, because they're impacted. By definition.
Hold the line
they
for me,
should be involved.
Hold the line for me, please, Brother Vincent. Let me just take a quick break and come back. Dr. Vincent Adams, energy expert and scientist, former senior manager of the United States Department of Energy, over 30 years of service, former executive director of the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana. We know that he's a cricketer, but we have some serious things to talk about, and we'll talk about cricket another time. Brother Vincent, because we have just about 10 minutes left, and I know I'm getting a backlash now from the environmentalists in the forum. They're because I said we had academics and politicians, etc. And I didn't mention that the environmental activists are listening and are ready to work and to do what is necessary. I think they also have their own ideas as to how to immediately begin to deal with this. But let us look now at what can we do generally as a nation, but more specifically as Caribbean countries, to begin to address this near and present danger?
Good. It's a very important question. And the one I've been advocating for this. And remember, I told you when I was at the EPA, the one thing that I was planning on doing is to get the CARICOM countries involved.
Yes.
Because the environmental impact assessment, as I said, is the Bible. It does all the studies, and sometimes it takes years to get an EIA done because of the input from everybody, that the impacted parties, all of these, and by definition, because the islands are impacted, have the potential to be, they should be involved in putting that EIA together. So here's what I've been advocating. I think with such a massive development that's going to impact the Caribbean, CARICOM needs to get involved with whether it's setting up a committee of sorts to coordinate and communicate. If, for example, if there's a spill from a ship passing through the Caribbean, who picks up the cost? Exxon or whoever is operating within the Caribbean should provide the resources to each of those countries, whether it's for training, for response teams, for training in Jamaica or Trinidad or wherever. The companies that are making the money with those ships passing through our waters, the Caribbean waters, should bear those costs and responsibilities. So the CARICOM has to get involved, because right now Guyana is soloing, and it's not working out. And I'm saying this this is not about politics. I'm saying this because from an international standpoint, from my knowledge of what happens not only in Guyana but throughout the world. I headed, as a matter of fact, I headed two major international environmental conferences with over 60 countries. So, I'm very aware. I was chairman of these conferences. I was chairman of the largest environmental association of professionals throughout the entire world. I was chairman of the USA chapter. So I've been exposed to what happens not only in the US but throughout the world.
Yes.
And within these islands, if they're going to be impacted, they must get involved in coming up with mitigative actions. They need to know how to respond. But it should not be at their cost. It should be at the cost of those who are making the money, using our waters to make the money. So CARICOM needs to step up and not just sit back. Like I said, very disappointed that those 3 letters went to key leadership in the Caribbean, and they just kind of ignore it and push it aside, obviously. So I'm glad that the environmentalists within the Caribbean and other people would be taking action to make this happen.
Yes. There has to be some pressure of governments, and we're going to have to do it from the grassroots up in terms of lobbying and pressuring our own governments to pay attention to this. Because you said something earlier that is critical to the understanding the whole of this in terms of the CARICOM's response, the Caribbean's response, which is that, so you have written to CARICOM, to Mayor Motley and Keith Rowley and so on, and without a response. And so it tells us a little bit more. And for me, it is a matter of following the money. Exxon, of course, is a massive conglomerate, and we know how they work. So that we have to pay attention to this and to say, lobby the governments at the highest level. Write our letters to CARICOM, make the calls, interrupt the sessions when we're going to the press conferences, because the media also has a role to play. And I think there's so much more that we can do. Ask these questions in the press conferences, please, but also to the activists and to those who are listening this morning, that what we can take away from this is our own singular responsibility, which is to say, what do I do and how do I do it? Let me reach out to the Prime Minister or to the Minister of Industry and Commerce or to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, however you do it. But let us reach out to the senior people who can make a difference. So that then, just to wrap, Brother Adams, and we did say we know that we needed more than an hour, but just to wrap now. This is one of the things that you have underscored all morning, that this is not a Guyana problem. This is a Caribbean problem. But I wanted to just to quickly talk about the Jamaica's particular situation, because obviously we're here. We know. Good morning to everybody listening from all over the world. Thank you so much. But we want to talk specifically to Jamaicans. Jamaica relies heavily on tourism. We are fighting here on the island for access to our coastline. And these are 2 things that you said earlier that I want to reiterate, that 2 things that you said are in grave danger in case of a risk. Could you reiterate that for me as we part?
Yes, well, there might even be more than 2. 2 as to the water, the devastation of the ocean, which means the fishing would definitely be gone. Like I said, even in the studies even done by Exxon, it shows that millions of fish eggs would be lost for just water, because what they do, they suck water. In addition to dumping water into the ocean, they suck water into the ship to re-inject into the reservoir. So I'm talking about millions of barrels of water they suck. So that suction sucks all of these eggs into it, so you're destroying the eggs. So when those eggs are gone, fish is gone. Of course, tourism. So so that's in terms of that water. Now the other thing that I did not even get to, every ship that, like I told you, these are massive ships. Okay, so when these ships come in to take the oil, they come in empty. They don't have any oil, so they have to put some weight into the ship So they've got a big, what they call ballast water. Millions of gallons of water they put into the ship. They load it. Let's say the ship is coming from China. They load that Chinese water into the ship to bring it to Guyana. Now they've got to offload that water. Who knows what that water has in it in terms of a totally different species of whatever it is.
Yes.
So they offload that water offshore. And the one thing about contaminants does not see geographical boundaries. Okay. So they offload that water, and this is happening on a daily basis. So that's another serious concern that needs to be addressed in terms of monitoring the water that comes in, and then they come and dump it, because now they're taking in oil. And they dump it, so I just say there's a lot of water because, like I told you, 1 to 2 of these massive ships are traversing every single day. And I'm not even counting the smaller vessels. These are just the oil tankers that take the stuff. But there are all other type of operational vessels that are doing exactly the same. But then, in terms of impacts again, those are the couple of things that could cause an impact, like I said, violating the law by exceeding the safe operating limit. You're putting everything at risk. Of course, the air, don't forget the air part in terms of the flaring, where acid rain can come from the sky and damage everything that it falls upon your ocean again, damage your fish and make everything acidic, your gardens, your farming, your infrastructure. So that's why the CARICOM government needs to get involved. And just
to reiterate, there are guardrails that can be put in place legally that can mitigate.
Yes.
And all of what we've talked about here this morning.
Absolutely. Look, things are going to happen, but at least if as a scientist and an engineer, I was responsible for even putting together a lot of these mitigative actions right here in the United States. And I'm coming up with laws and regulations to control them. If we adopt those, we as scientists, I always brag and say engineers and scientists can solve any problem as long as it may cost more, but the solutions are there.
Yes.
And Exxon is making a lot of money. So we can come up with their solutions. However, you have got to make sure that Exxon, you got to provide the strong institutions to make sure that they're implementing these methods and science and technology that have been developed to make it safe.
Are you available to speak if the Jamaican government reach out to you? Are you open and available to speak with people from government or environmentalists?
Absolutely. Yes, without question, I'll be happy to speak with. I'll be more than happy, as a matter of fact, to speak with to lend them some of my advice.
Well, listen to all those who are government operatives and opposition operatives who normally listen just to care about news. I have Dr. Vincent's number. I will give it to you. And you also know how to find him otherwise. I'm sure you can do that without me. But if you wish, call me and I'll give the number to you. Brother Vincent Adams, thank you so much.
And if you want to talk cricket, I can talk cricket too. By the way, yes. I know I've got a Sunday night program with this guy. He used to be a cricket commentator, Dr. Hines.
Yes.
But so we've got a standing Sunday night program to talk about Caribbean cricket. Yeah.
Which station?
It's Politics 101.
Okay.
It's the program, Dr. Hines, but we talk Caribbean cricket, West Indies cricket every Sunday night.
I'll co-host a program with you entitled "Show Them the Face of the Willow." It's a private joke. Thank you so much, Brother Vincent, and we talk soon again.
Anytime.
All right.
Anytime. It was my pleasure.
My absolute pleasure too. Thank you so much, my brother, and we'll talk again. Dr. Vincent Adams, energy expert and scientist, former senior manager at the United States Department of Energy with over 30 years of service, former executive director of the Environmental Protection Agency in Guyana. spoken about. And one of the things that I wanted to reiterate, what's happening with the Teaching Council Act. It seems to me that what they have passed in the House is ridiculous. The effort is good. I'm not saying that the effort isn't good, but it seems to me as if they really do have their heads in the sand. They're setting up teachers. So we are going to have to be prepared for more failure in our students. And I'm very, very sorry to say that. But where this is going is not on a good path. When teachers not licensed to teach a particular subject, and that teacher is employed to teach it because they might have knowledge of it, but not the license or the school, what are we going to see on the backside of this act? We're going to go deeply into that next week, hopefully. Teachers already are working like magicians because they more or less have nothing to work with. It has to be a multifaceted approach. And it seems to me as if we start from the wrong place. Get your heads out of the sand. This is pretty ridiculous if you ask me. How are we going to do this? How do we plan to do this? That is a question. How do we plan to do this? It's almost like it's a punishment. It's almost like it's a punishment for the teachers. And I'm not quite sure how else to approach this. But I've looked at it, and this is how it is reading to me. What about the government's accountability? Shouldn't we start there? Education system. And now they're putting it on the teachers. It is just plain wrong. So they're going to be weaponizing all of this against the teachers, the hardworking teachers, and many teachers are hardworking. And once again, just to underscore, I'm not saying it is all bad. So we really do have to commend the effort. But this has the potential to be weaponized against the teachers. We know the system and we know how the system works. And it also seems to be trying to get the performance pay thingy that they have been talking about through the back door. There's just so much wrong with this. Once again, I'm saying the effort is good. It was always a good thing. You know, I've had many conversations about this in this space about, what happens with lawyers, what happens with medical doctors in terms of licensing, what we see happening in the UK. These are really not bad things. These are good, if you ask me, for ongoing education, improvement along the way, self-actualization. But what I'm seeing here can't work and can't stand by itself. We understand also that in the United States, in the United Kingdom, they plan to block out the sun. The United Kingdom has a massive $1 billion plan to block out the sun. What it tells me, they say they have the technology to do this. They have been doing it already, And one of the things that they have done is that they're creating all kinds of mayhem in the galaxies and in the universe with the sun and the moon and the star and everybody. And then they turn around and tell you that it is climate change and it is weather this and it is black hole and blue hole and pink hole. And at the end of the day, they are the ones who are creating the problems. They have a solution to fix a problem. So they have to find a solution to fix every problem. No, I don't know. Biggie, do we have a problem with the sun, sir? Do you have a problem with the son?
No, just with the daughter.
Just with the what? The daughter? And Biggie only have a problem with the daughter. So I don't know why they block it. Should they block out the daughter? Yeah. Should they block out the daughter and say, we'll say Biggie say free up the daughter, much less they block out the son. So this is ridiculous. So they're doing this while they're telling us about environmental, what do they call it again? They have a name for it, climate change. the Europeans are doing all kinds of stupidness, if you ask me, all kinds of crazy acts with the universe and within the universe. If it's not a cloud, it's a sun. If our sun is a moon, the other day them shoot at the moon, use CERN to shoot at the moon, and then and all kinds of stuff, and then they turn on and tell you about climate change and so on. You know, I just cannot be bothered, if you ask me. It don't make no sense. I'll talk some more about it later on. There's a scandal coming out of Harvard, the Harvard slavery scandal. Thank you, Brother Ajamu, for bringing my attention to that document. I'll talk about it next week. And just to remind our listeners that we march on April 30 for Burkina Faso and for Ibrahim Traore. The Prime Minister, well, before I go to the Prime Minister, we understand that we have over 100 people, Jamaican citizens, killed by police since the start of the year. Over 100. I can't even wrap my head around that. All me I think about is that then if police will just go and kill people. So I know that some people don't mind it, you know. But it could be you next time. How this go? I don't get it. I cannot understand it. Why we can't shoot them in the foot and carry them in? Why everybody just like, I mean, over 100 people in Jamaica killed by police since. May I wonder if that figure they're right.
I think we should put down headphone.
Yeah, I'm wondering,
Because
as Big A puts on his headphone, I'm just wondering if those figures are right. I had to look at it again and again and again and again and again to say, I don't think the figures are right.
no, I tell you something. You have touched that.
See your microphone, eh?
You have touched that. Sore point with me, Cabo.
Yes.
2 years ago, in November, I think it was. You know, I am from Brownstone.
Yes.
Yes? And I have been an upstanding citizen
Yes.
of Brownstone from Idi Amin.
Yes.
Born and raised.
Yes.
You have never heard my name being mixed up in any illegal activity or you know.
Nothing, but we just a straight.
Yeah.
You know, straight laced.
Good. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, right?
Yes.
That's in big A. No. Can you imagine? I was awakened because I have a caretaker at my house. I'm up in Brownstone. And I was awakened one morning with her bawling at the top of her voice because a barrage of policemen and soldiers descended upon my property in Brownstone.
Oh, are you serious?
Saying that they understand that I am holding a fugitive.
Goodness gracious me. You?
Yes, I am holding a fugitive. And they are looking for a lady, a crippled lady, in my house. My mother has passed on, but was never crippled to be started.
Right.
And has passed on 20 odd years ago, right? They are looking for a crippled lady, and they understand that a fugitive from Kingston is now dwelling at my yard. Whole lot of guns pointed, you know, right? Guns pointed. And I mean, at the top of their voice, them telling the person to come out, right? Come out now. Now, can you imagine if I was in that house?
Yes.
At that particular point in time?
Yes.
Right?
And your initial...
Let alone if I fit the description of who they were looking for.
This is what I cannot understand. Because, you see, and this is the point, right? A similar thing happened to me, you know. I don't think and it's just recent. It was in December, January, where I just look and see 5 police officers with long gun drive up on my yard. And nobody can tell me where them come from and why they were there.
Not to mention the damage that they have done to my property, and I know I haven't gotten any compensation for it.
They actually damage your property?
Yes. They break the window and lick down the door.
So that.
And I have tried
and that explains
all different kinds of avenues to get compensation and to get an explanation.
And nothing.
And nothing at all.
Wow.
So when you're talking about about the mayhem and the wild
abandonment
of discretion, the abandonment of discretion and reason to kill. It is.
Can we do this a different way? How do we do this a different way? And why you don't do this in some communities?
It is frightening.
It's only where the masses of the Jamaican people are that you're doing this, because you're certainly not doing this in certain communities. And this is the thing that bothers me seriously. Now, there's another thing, because you just described to me, and you're making a very good point, because if you destroy property, up to this point, you can't even get compensation for that, and a union brigade, so I don't know how that go. And so that the anger with which you've come, any card could, the universe forbid, I'm not even going to say that, but this is just the bottom line. I'm saying that how do you then know? Because so we hear about people being killed, and I know that there's a thing in Jamaica where a crime is so high that, if they tell you that it is a Don, if they tell you that the person is suspected Don, if they tell you that the person is in a gang, you are just to believe. But why are we to just believe? Because you can't tell me anything. When you not carry the person through the court system, our justice is so always so delayed in Jamaica that by the time you get them to the court system, they're old and crippled.
That is it.
But 100 persons big since the start. I don't think I read that thing there right.
No, and it is. It is correct. It is correct.
What are you thinking on it?
Well, you heard me a while ago. It's painful.
Yeah.
It is painful. And I wonder how many of these persons are innocent. And I wonder how many of the situations could have been dealt with differently.
We think we can do it differently.
Because, as I said, I could be the victim
yourself.
Myself.
And when you put that in context,
I do not know what would happen.
When you put that in context, can you imagine? When you put that in context,
Up to this date, I have not received an apology, let alone any compensation.
Then something can go so.
And I have not said this since the occurrence of the event, but when you mentioned it this morning, it has struck a nerve.
And that's the thing, whether something happened 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it occupied the same space in your memory.
Yeah, man. And the lady who is the caretaker of my property in Brownston is petrified.
She's traumatized.
She is.
She's traumatized, but you traumatized and you're not even did it.
Of course.
I can just imagine when you look at your house and see.
Just to think
the violation.
That somebody would want to castigate me, among wrongdoers.
As a kidnapper? That's a vicious
holding
vile. Yeah. Goodness gracious, you're not wearing a wig.
You know what I mean?
And driving on the Spanish Town bypass. You see me and him talking at you, listen. No.
That's my reference. When I play gospel.
You play the gospel, I know so.
I play gospel.
So at least
there is a similarity.
That's alone them can't use. That's alone for church. The fact that you play a gospel is no reason,
There's no reason.
To judge a man.
That reason enough.
No, but you don't owe big and apology. But they owe me apology too, because I tell you, say, I just come in really ready. Because my lawyer tell me, so don't say not much on the ear right now, because, but it is frightening when, whether you hear it, and then I can imagine, because the violation, when you see your house mash up, the door kick off and the destruction, that is like, that's a serious level.
Wake up the whole neighborhood. This is not what's done in quiet.
And you can't pick up all of the feathers, you can't just imagine some people say, when do, because police come in here.
We don't say me them something a long time.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
How do you repair damages like that?
You don't. Them need to apologize, as you say, and compensate you too. Reparations to the world when they're birth ready.
Yeah.
Like you want a lawyer.
I do.
Yes. But Samuel,
No.
like you have 2 cases this morning from the one program. Pan-African attorney at law, Mr. Bert Samuels, you've got 2 cases from one program. That's tough. Yeah, but anyway, did you? I know I have to run, and I know you need a program. But did you see that story with Jada Kingdom, who went to the Kite Festival? Because we spoke about the Kite Festival last time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one in St. Mary. I heard it was pretty good.
When she said she don't make songs for kids?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Because she seemed so remorseful. I don't know if you. Well, I read it in the paper, so I don't know if she said it elsewhere.
Right.
But she seems so remorseful that I don't think I've ever seen or heard any artists having that kind of reflection leaving a show.
No, I didn't see or read it in the detail. But I just know that she did say that she doesn't make songs for kids, and she does not. Right. In all honesty.
But she was...
she is a PG-13. What do you call it? Or 21.
Yes, I can't do it. She said she more than that. But right. but just the way she sounded, so humble, so remorseful, so retrospective, that I think she's going to do something about it. Because she kept saying, I'm going to have to put some song over yourself for children. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. But to me, it's a good thing that she's reflecting on it, and she says every time she starts a song, she have to stop it because when she looked down and see the pit of them, she couldn't finish the song, and that to me is that is taking responsibility, big game. And that to me, when we say taking responsibility, do not answer me. I don't want to answer.
You don't want to answer.
No.
Oh, all right.
I know you come with. No, but seriously though, that's quite something, isn't it? That kind of reflection is
no. To me. Here I am.
There you go, G. Look at now.
But listen.
Go on.
Did Jada Kingdom know that she was going to perform at the Kite Festival? Did she know months before? That is why she was advertised, correct?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, if the board...
Okay, if she was advertised. Okay.
Was correct.
She knew a long time.
She would have known.
But let me stop you because she said something. She said she was slated to perform between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. And she thought that even though you had a Kite Festival in the day, the children would have gone home by then.
You don't have a clue about Kite Festival left.
Well, me think so too. So the people would have gone by 2, 3 o'clock in the morning?
No, hold on. But make we reason this out logically.
Yes.
Right?
Come now, let us reason. Yes.
Who them going to go home to? Because them parents, they're the Kite Festival.
But to quote you, the parents must take responsibility.
Of course.
And carry them children home before.
No, they can't carry them home. Go leave them with who?
Go home, go stay with the picking them.
Oh, so don't come to the show then.
Using your philosophy.
No, we are reasoning it out.
No, we are using your philosophy.
No.
Which is you must take responsibility for yourself.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And I agree.
Right.
And I am saying that.
You know something have you do. You know something have you do.
No.
Listen on me, have you on the wire. Have you on the wire. This is like the fight last night.
No.
OB3AH, Eubank and whoever.
No.
Yes.
So you are recoiling that me did beat her last week.
Yeah, but you beat me last week.
You're not gonna get it this time. Because listen.
No. You beat me last week.
You have to beat me again today. No, you have to beat me again today. Because you've gone down the wrong hole. Because listen.
All right, go ahead.
Whereas the parents should take responsibility.
Right.
The artist should also understand context, because it is a Kite Festival. You can't assume that persons are going to go home.
Yes, you can. You know why you can assume? Because the law say not picking enough to be out at streets a stage show between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m.
Which law? Unless accompanied by their parent.
Which law? Yeah.
Unless accompanied by their parent.
Amendment. Subsection 1 of subsection 2, amendment 5.
I can carry my children. If my child is with me, I can have them out at any hour of the night. They are with
2
me.
a.m., 3 a.m. a stage show.
No, They are with me. They are under
Listen.
my protection. No, hold on. Hold on.
So you are a parent who is breaking the law. So when you take the picture from you,
when the law
that's basically the law that I told you.
The law that you make. The law that you make. No.
You see, because you cannot prove
Andrea's law or Kabu's law.
You see, because you cannot prove that the law don't exist. We just no way we can argue.
I know the law don't exist.
No, you do not know that. Prove it.
No, you mean me not?
You do not know that law does not exist.
Of course, it does not exist.
But you just amended the law.
No. What? No, I'm correcting you. You
just amended the law.
I am correcting you. I'm telling you what the law is.
You add to the law.
No, right? I am amending it.
But I put it to you.
No, that I think not go, sir.
Gentlemen across the corner, please approach the bench. If you study the evidence closely, you'll see that this law exists, right? This law exists, right? And we're leaving it there. You're not going to leave him here now, because you know someone beat him this week. Me personally not take. Look here, me not going to beat this week.
I am just telling you.
I declare myself a winner. And please do. I like to beg the people who texting to say them agree with Big A after the program then done. Please to text him to tell him say, agree with me this week.
No, hold on. Listen. The promoter.
Yeah.
When he's choosing an act,
right,
for a show,
right,
should be cognizant,
right,
of the audience that he's appealing to and the artist.
And that's the point I was making last week about the liquor owner then. But anyway, go ahead.
No.
That's my very same point.
No.
Thank you for making my point for me.
No, that's different.
But point number one, go ahead to number two.
No, it is different.
You are allowed to move on to number two because of the time.
Totally
It's
different.
going to be cash pot before we leave here.
No, hey, listen.
Point number two.
No. We need to have a program.
All right.
For ourselves on these issues.
Okay. Yes, I think so.
Right? No, but no. Not,
I am packing up my things. I'm packing up my troubles in my bag and leaving here because you see, I'm leaving while I'm winning. I'm not going.
But you're not with.
Oh, what you mean by now?
You're not with. I am just listen.
Okay, you know where I won? I won on a point of law.
No, law.
Yes.
What law?
What do you mean which law? Can you prove that the law don't exist?
No, man, it don't exist.
But where's the proof? Where is the proof?
No, it don't exist.
If I can't prove it,
no, man, bring the.
You can't just come inside here and say the law don't exist.
The law don't exist.
I am quoting law to you. You can't do it. I know the law.
I don't. Listen. No, that I think that.
So the promoter.
Don't be bamboozled, yeah, people. But no.
The law exists. So the promoter, you see the time, the promoter owes the next person.
No, and
the artist.
Yes.
Right. What about the parents?
They're responsible too.
Last week, you cuss me off properly and tell me say that's why society mash up, because me put on other things on people, and this is exactly what you're doing here this morning.
What am I doing? I am sharing the responsibility.
That's what I was doing last week, and you would have none of it.
No. You were putting the bulk of the blame on the liquor company last week.
So aren't you putting the bulk of the blame today on the promoter?
Because he deserves it.
Well, then the liquor company never deserves it.
No. It's two totally different things.
Look how me come back on with.
No, this is an organized.
I like to say.
This is an organized event.
Yes.
Aimed at a party.
So to the ones I was talking about.
No.
By the way, you're not going to count about that. Just put it this way, Big. I won this one.
No.
And then we come back and win back last week.
No.
I really litigated last week.
No.
And
retroactively?
Yes, I really litigated.
Nothing.
We went to the Court of Appeal. This is hands on. You see, and it's your fault because me declared the win for last week. Look how me come back and win last week.
But
I'm playing chess, you're playing draft.
And you're right, because Crown me king. Crown me king.
Look at if we continue to talk about beat me, because so me gone. You see what I'm gonna do? If we continue, he will beat me. So let me play a boost him along me. Or do we take an ad? We take the ad.
Yes,
Professor ad. See you next week.
One Uptown TV. Yo, enough there, me I represent. Bang.
Being representing a man for Uptown TV.
Bad we bad Gaza, bad we bad. Bad we bad Gaza.